The manga story begins with the moment when Cyril LaRose, the main character, was expelled from the guild. He was told that people who show sympathy for tools are not needed. Cyril chuckled, did not say anything in his defense, he just turned around and left. The kind young man, loved by dragons, continues to follow the path he believes in. He was expelled from the S-rank guild, but thanks to his ability to talk to dragons, he became a dragon knight. Dragons? Now people could not imagine life without them. About 100 years ago, people themselves learned to breed dragons, and since then they began to use them in a variety of areas. They differed in size. There were small dragons, medium, and large. The first, although small, are still 2 to 3 times larger than people, were used mainly for transportation. This also applied to war. There were many dragon riders. Medium creatures were comparable in size to a residential building. Their main purpose was to transport large moats over long distances. Large dragons were the main attack force of any army. Most often, such dragons had names. People who subjugated such creatures were called dragon knights, or in other words, knights on dragons. One day, dragon knights got together and created their own guild. Cyril saw a dragon of the Vritra species fly past him. These dragons could fly, were loyal to their master, and very hardy. They could fly huge distances. Among the medium ones, there are also those that are especially loyal to their master. This is the Nidhogg species. They are valued for their lively disposition and are used in war. A boy saw a flying dragon. He told his mother to look. There was a flying dragon up there. He was so cool. He exclaimed that when he grows up, he will definitely become a dragon knight. Cyril smiled, hearing his words, and thought that becoming a dragon knight is every boy's dream. Of course, it is so prestigious to fight on a dragon, and it is very well paid. Suddenly, Cyril heard some noise and went towards it. You could hear someone's youthful voice ordering someone to do something. Coming closer to the source of the noise, Cyril saw that a dragon was standing in the middle of the street, and the young man was indignant. Why was he standing there? Let him go to his place already and not just stand there. The dragon did not like this. He snorted loudly. Cyril recognized him as a Terax species, a small dragon, and thought that he was probably rented. Many people keep dragons for this. This type is very suitable for ground riding. There are no roughnesses on the body. That's what makes it comfortable. Cyril realized that this dragon was not just standing there. Something was bothering him. The guy did not stop being indignant. Like, what a shame. Why did he stand there? A small crowd of people had already gathered around them, and the main character squeezed through it and approached the guy. He apologized for distracting him and asked if he could intervene. The guy was surprised, but did not refuse. He greeted him and apologized for the difficulties they were having right now. The dragon was temporarily not for rent. Cyril replied that he was not a client at all, but simply came up to say that it seemed that the creature's paw hurt. That's why it was standing. The guy was surprised. What was he saying? Cyril repeated that the dragon's right hind paw hurt. The young man was amazed. He crouched down in front of the dragon and asked it to take a couple of steps. The creature made an attempt, and at that very moment, his whole body began to tremble. The guy regretfully noted that it was true. His paw was injured. He exclaimed, when did he manage to make a wound for himself? Where did he manage to do it? Sighing heavily, he continued that now he would have to suspend the rental. He asked the Cyrili if he also rented dragons. He helped him out with his advice today. Cyril replied that he was not a renter, and added that the young man should take good care of the dragon. The young man replied that he would do so. Cyril approached the dragon, and the creature thanked him. Cyril replied that there was no need for thanks. The main thing was that he got better. In a flashback, entering the dragon farm, Cyril approached one of the dragons, patted him on the neck, and said that this little one was in a bad mood today. He needed a day off. The guy laughed. What was he talking about? He had never heard of dragons being sad. Cyril irritably asked him what he even knew about this. Dragons also have feelings. The young man asked why he should show sympathy to ordinary cattle, or was he crazy? Cyril was furious. He had understood the language of dragons since childhood. No, he could not talk to animals, but dragons were a different matter, so he became a dragon knight. He studied dragons for a long time, memorized their distinctive features, and one day learned to control them. In addition, he always asked for a favor when he saddled them. People thought that he made the dragons move with just his mind, and one day he was invited to the S-rank guild of the Dragon Knights, Lindworm. Guilds receive a rank for the number of dragons and the abilities of the riders. The maximum rank is S rank. To get it, the guild must complete 3 quests of the highest difficulty in cooperation with another guild, or 2 quests with their own knights. Lindworm took the second path, but their knights forced the dragons to work against their will, which went against his views on the world. Less than a month later, he was expelled in disgrace. The interpretation of the expulsion was banal. He was accused of being useless ballast and making up reasons not to work. He was glad of this with all his heart and decided for himself that he would never join a guild again and everything would be fine. But he still needed to eat something. After leaving the guild, he was forced to work as a free dragon knight. The main place to earn money was the city hall, where freedom-loving knights like him could take on assignments. Of course, there were also ads for work that ordinary citizens could do, so orders from many agencies were collected here. But knights who left the guild as a rule do not have their own dragon, and assignments from agencies are not available to them, and anyone could take orders from the city hall. There were even some that could be completed by renting a dragon. Cyril approached the stand with ads, ran his eyes over them, and one thing interested him. Judging by the order, it was necessary to train a newborn dragon, which suited Cyril completely. Came to the address, he was met by the owner, who introduced himself as Patrick Forge. Cyril told him his name. Patrick thanked him for volunteering to help him. He explained that many people do not want to take on this task once they know the details. Cyril knew what he was talking about. After all, taming dragons is not training. Patrick believed that Cyril was right. Cyril first clarified how exactly the man wanted to raise his dragon. Patrick answered that he wanted to give it to his son for his birthday. He heard from his fellow merchants that when a child is born, you need to get a dragon. Cyril agreed with him that this was a good custom. This way, the child and the dragon become very attached to each other, and the dragon can act as a bodyguard for the child. The merchant continued that, when he bought this dragon, he hired different trainers. But for some reason, the dragon did not listen to them at all. For Cyril, this was unusual. Patrick said that was why he decided to turn to the Dragon Knights. Maybe he could do something. Cyril understood his problem and asked to show him this creature. The merchant invited him to follow him and brought him to the dragon. Cyril realized that in front of him was a Terax, a type of small dragon. The man said that this type is compact and easily gets used to people, so he chose it. Cyril approved of his choice and added that this type is also used to transport people. Patrick sadly replied that he did not listen to the trainers anyway. He asked Cyril to do something. Cyril replied that he would try and approach the dragon. He told him his name and asked what his name was. Instead, the dragon said that she wanted to see her little sister. Cyril asked her to be quiet and asked, "Little sister? What does she mean? Let her tell him more about this." Then the dragon realized what was happening. She asked Cyril in surprise, "Does he understand what she is saying?" Cyril confirmed that it was so. The dragon did not believe it. Cannot be. But if it is really so, listen to her. She and her sister were always together. But this man, the merchant, took only her. Cyril thought, "Is that so?" The dragon asked him to let her be with her sister. Then in return, she will do everything he says. Cyril clarified, would she like to live with her sister? The dragon answered that they were together since they hatched, but then they were separated. Cyril said that the man who bought her wants her to be friends with his child. Will she listen to what his son has to say? The dragon agreed to this. If only he would bring her sister, and she would do anything. Cyril replied that he understood everything and went to Patrick. The man asked him how it went. Was he able to find out anything? Cyril answered positively. He asked where Patrick bought this dragon. The man replied that he bought it from a dragon merchant. Cyril advised him to ask the merchant right away if he had another dragon like this. This was the younger sister of the dragon he had bought. She said that she would do anything if the man brought her sister. That was the problem. Patrick was amazed. A younger sister? Did this dragon just tell him that? Cyril replied that whatever the case, he should just do it. The man agreed and replied that he would do everything. After a while, he brought the second dragon, which jumped over the fence. The sisters rushed toward each other, but the older sister could not approach the younger one because she was on a leash. Cyril asked Patrick to let her go. The man looked at him in bewilderment. Cyril repeated his request more insistently. Then he said, "Well, as Celia says, and let the dragon off the leash." The creatures rushed towards each other with a joyful greeting. The older sister exclaimed how happy she was to meet, and that she was alive and well. She had no longer hoped to see her youngest. Their behavior was touching. They rubbed their muzzles against each other and cooed like doves. Patrick was shocked by what he saw. Cyril said that they were sisters. The man was amazed that they were just like people. Cyril was now at ease. Patrick realized that they should be kept together as soon as he saw their meeting, so he could understand their feelings, even without understanding their words. The man went into the house and invited Cyril to follow him. They needed to discuss the payment. Cyril nodded to him, approached the dragons. The older sister thanked him for bringing her sister. The younger asked him, was it thanks to him that they met? And she expressed her gratitude from the bottom of her heart. They assured him that they would do everything he told them. Salir replied that nothing was needed. Let them just become friends with the son of this merchant. They promised him that they would help the man's son in everything until death do them part. Cyril patted them on the head and asked them to try. Patrick met him at the threshold of the house. He expressed his surprise and thanked Cyril. He could not believe that Salir did his job so easily. After all the trainers he hired could not find a common language with the dragon. He is an incredible person. Cyril noted that the main thing is that Patrick does not separate them, both now and when they grow up. Otherwise, they will stop listening to his orders and he will start having problems again. The man replied that he remembered everything and would do everything as Cyril said. Having received his payment, Cyril went home. At last, he looked at the dragons who were sweetly cuddling with each other and smiled. He thought that he had been kicked out of the guild, but he did not regret it. Understanding the dragon language, he could understand their feelings. He would continue to help them and appreciate them. He does work to earn a living. This is, of course, important, but he had to remember his real job. So Cyril went to the city hall again. There were several people standing near the ad stand. They were discussing each ad. One of them exclaimed that this order he pointed to had a big reward. His partner asked where it was written. The guy called him a dumbass and showed him again. The partner looked and said that here, you have to take care of a dragon. This is not it. Cyril thought that such a job would not suit him either. He began to look at other ads and saw a good order on one. He tore off the paper and said, well, he will try. Arriving at the address, he heard a female voice through the window asking someone, how is the lady still writing? Whatever happened, but writing so many letters is not normal. The girl's voice said that she did not agree. It was a big problem. No matter how many letters she wrote, it would take a long time before some dragon knight took on this task. If they were late, everything would be worse than ever. The sad girl looked out the window and lamented, where is he, that knight who will save them? It was Katerina Marielle. He wondered what kind of task this mysterious girl had. After some time, Cyril briskly walked to the address that was given to him. He walked and thought. Of course, he imagined something like this. But this order was special. Expelled from the elite guild, Sealer earned extra money by completing various tasks using his gift. But this order was different from all the others. He had a meeting with the client who needed his help. He went to the address and noted that the mansion looked luxurious. He was tasked with delivering a letter, and as a reward, he was offered high-quality dragon equipment. Although it was useless for an unemployed knight without his own dragon like him, it could still come in handy. He remembered how he went to see the mysterious girl who introduced herself to him as Katerina. She noted that he was quite young. Was he sure that he could handle the task? Did he at least know how to handle dragons? Cyril smirked and replied that he seemed to know how. Katerina offered him tea and asked how well he knew his job. Cyril answered her that everything depended on the dragon. He looked at the girl and thought that when he heard her voice, for some reason he imagined her like that. Katerina had no choice but to accept his answer, especially since he was not the only one she had sent this request to. Cyril noted that it seemed to be a very important letter. The girl agreed that it was. She thought that if she wrote one letter, it might not arrive. So she wrote several letters. Cyril thought that Marielle was a noble family with many possessions. Apparently, she was much richer than Patrick, whose order he had just completed. He noted that he had one question for her. What was in this letter? The girl was surprised. What did this mean? Did he decide to interrogate her? Cyril replied that it was not like that at all, but if he knew the contents of the letter, it would be easier for him to deliver it. After all, she wanted it to reach its destination as soon as possible, and he would need to think carefully about how to best protect this confidential information. Katerina thought about it and admitted that he was right. She will tell him it is a love letter, or rather, a response to a love letter from Baron Bouquet. Cyril was surprised, so they communicate through letters. The girl complained, if only he knew how hard it is to maintain relations between two families. Besides, the Baron is very capricious. She waved her hand as if to say, okay, let him forget about it. Katerina named a place called Libo and asked him how long it would take him to deliver it. Cyril figured out that he would need to go to Libo, the city of Poveltel. The distance to there was about as long as he thought. He replied that he had calculated everything he would deliver the letter in one day. She was surprised. It was quite fast. Everyone else said that the journey would take 3 days. Cyril shrugged. She said, okay, the main thing is that he delivers it. In that case, She is counting on him. The girl handed him the letter and reminded him not to forget to bring proof that the task was completed. He would receive the reward when he returned. Cyril assured her that he understood everything and set off. He thought that first he needed to rent a dragon because he didn't have one. Of course, he didn't expect the quest to involve something like this. It seemed that this wasn't just an assignment from the Mariel family, it also involved the Bouquet family, or so he thought. He had to give it his all. Cyril came to the dragon rental office. The owner of the office greeted him and asked what kind of dragon he was looking for. Kyler asked if he had any wyverns. The faster the dragon, the better, for one person without any luggage. The renter replied that they had 3 and asked him to follow him. When they entered the dragon farm, the owner showed him where to go. Cyril replied that he would choose his own dragon, to which the owner agreed. Each knight has his own way of handling dragons, and there are those who do not want to reveal their secrets of communication to outsiders. Cyril thought that the owner of this place was already used to such guests. Suddenly, 2 dragons came to life and squealed to each other. "Here he comes, here he comes. Look, someone has come. A man has come, and he looks stupider than the previous one." Cyril answered them that it was very cruel of them. He was not stupid at all. One of the dragons said, "What can you do if he looks like that?" Then it dawned on him that the man understood them, and he asked in surprise, did he really understand them? Cyril smiled. Something like that. The dragons were amazed. How was this possible? Was he raised by dragons? Kyler answered them that it was not quite so. They were even more surprised. And who then? However, be that as it may, he is an unusual person. Does he have some business with them? Cyril would like one of them to help him complete the task. He urgently needs to deliver a letter. So, could they tell him who of them flies the fastest? The second dragon answered that she's very fast. The first dragon chattered, "Let him wait." A letter? What kind of letter? Could it be a love letter? Yes. A love letter? Cyril was amazed by her curiosity and reaction. The dragon continued to ask who was writing to whom, the guy to a girl or vice versa. Cyril answered puzzledly that a girl to a guy. The dragon became even more active. If she exclaimed that everything was decided, she would take him. She said impatiently, "Why is he hesitating? Let him be faster and she will help him deliver this letter." Cyril was amazed. Is this the only reason she is so eager to complete the task? The second dragon called the first one a pervert and asked what was good about human relationships. Then she turned to Cyril and said that the first dragon was really the fastest. Cyril couldn't believe it and asked the first dragon if she really got faster when it came to letters. The dragon replied that it was, and Cyril agreed to choose her. When he told the owner his choice, that he would like to rent the one on the right, the man was surprised. Is he sure? If he needs to get there faster, it would be better to take the dragon in the middle. Cyril refused his offer and said that the dragon he chose would do. The owner said that it was quite unusual, but let it be as he says. When Cyril brought out the dragon, it asked him to give her a letter. Cyril grumbled, okay, and gave the dragon the letter. The creature noisily inhaled the scent of the letter and delightedly said that it was the scent of a girl. Cyril doubted, is everything really going to be okay? The dragon assured him that everything would be so, continued to admire the beautiful handwriting. Cyril thought that this dragon was incredible. Wyverns are very fast dragons despite their small size. Even though he was flying to Lebo by the shortest route, she took him there in the blink of an eye simply because she was holding a letter in her teeth. Thus, they flew to Lebo in just half a day. The Baron was very happy with Katarina's letter. He praised Cyril for his excellent work and asked to leave him alone. Cyril noticed that they were both kind of strange. After some time, the Baron wrote a reply, and Kyler gave the reply letter to the dragon. She took it back in the same half a day. He successfully returned to Mrs. Katarina and reported that his journey took half the time. The girl replied that he was simply unique, and indeed, he delivered the letter in one day and returned so quickly. She remarked that he was very good. Cyril was embarrassed by her praise and thanked her for the kind words. Katarina asked what his name was. Cyril introduced himself to her. The girl replied that she would remember his name. If she had another task, she would definitely call him. Cyril thought with joy that he had successfully completed another task. After that, he came to the dragon market. He wanted to look at the creatures for sale, although the price for them was still high, but it was also too expensive to rent them. If he could buy his own dragon and build a trusting relationship with it, then the two of them could handle any job. He slowly walked along the pens with dragons and looked closely. Suddenly, he stopped in front of one creature. He thought, is this Baylor's price too cheap? It turns out that this dragon was sold for next to nothing. I wonder what the reason for the low price was. He went to the merchant, who greeted him. Cyril asked him what was wrong with the bailor that had a low price. His price was no higher than the rental price of any other dragon, and the for sale ad looked very shabby. The merchant hesitated with an answer. Syleer asked him if she was sick with something. The man answered that the dragon had no physical defects. She was very good compared to other bailors. Cyril was puzzled. Then what was the matter? The merchant said that, without going into details, she was very lazy. Cyril was surprised. Is that really true? The man continued that the dragon often did not do what she was told, so he would not advise him to take her. Cyril asked him for permission to take a closer look at her. Of course, the merchant allowed him to do so. He led him to the dragon and told him that he could take his time. Bailors are often used for transporting goods. Although they are not very fast, they are very hardy due to their strong muscles. In addition, they are herbivorous dragons, so any of this species will be happy with grassy meadows. This greatly simplified their care. Cyril approached the dragon closer and greeted her. He apologized for disturbing her, but he was talking to the seller about her. He asked why she did not want to work so much. The dragon was silent in response. Cyril asked her again. She will not talk to him? She opened her eyes and said what difference did it make to him? He would not understand anyway. Cyril noted that she was very calm for a dragon and offered her to start over without misunderstandings. Suddenly, she shuddered and asked in a surprised voice, "Can he talk?" Cyril grinned. Did she notice this only now? The dragon asked how this was possible. He answered that it was not so important. The most important thing is that sometimes this power helps him out. So what is the matter with her? She yawned and answered that she wanted to sleep. Cyril asked again, "Sleep?" The dragon confirmed that it was so. She wanted to sleep 12 hours a day. Otherwise, she would not be able to work. He noted that this was unusual. Usually, dragons are so strong that only 2 hours of sleep are enough for them to fully rest. In addition, there are those that can continue to move when they sleep. He thought that every dragon was unique in its own way. Sealer offered her that he would allow her to sleep 12 hours a day, and she would help him. The dragon did not believe him, said that he was lying. Cyril objected. He did not lie to her. If he did not agree to this, he would simply take another dragon. She understood the reasonableness of his argument and clarified. Is he really going to allow her to sleep so much? Cyril replied that it was. But in exchange, she would work hard. The dragon agreed to his offer and said that she would believe him. When Cyril told the seller that he was taking this dragon, the man was surprised. Is he sure? They do not issue refunds. Cyril assured him that he was absolutely sure of his decision. The Dragon Knights have their own methods of work. Thus, Cyril acquired a faithful assistant, or rather, a friend. He asked her if he could give her a name. It would be much easier for them to communicate with each other. She was not against it, but don't people usually call dragons by numbers? The main character reasonably decided that he could talk to her, so there was no point in the numbers. She understood his position. Sealer asked her if she liked the name Louise. She chanted it. He asked if she didn't like such a name. The dragon answered that it was not the matter. It just felt unusual. Now she had a name, and she liked it, I guess. Cyril looked at her doubtfully and said that it would be good. They approached his house. He told her that they were there. This was his house. Louise asked him where she could sleep. He replied that there was a garden behind the house. She could sleep wherever she wanted, but she had to forgive him. If he had known that he would be living with a dragon, he would have rented a house with a bigger garden, but he still hoped that this garden would suit her. Louise reassured him. She didn't care as long as she could sleep. He chuckled and noted that she really was a sleepyhead. Cyril asked if she was going to go to bed now. It was already getting dark, and besides, there was no work for today. She asked him doubtfully if he was serious. Cyril replied that he was serious. He was completely confident in his decision, so she shouldn't worry. Louise said that he was a strange person. He chuckled. People often say things like that to him. She addressed him as the owner, rearranging some of the letters in this word. He laughed and corrected her. The dragon conspiratorially said that she would show only him something. He wondered what she would show him. She replied that it was her secret and used the skill Light Spear. Her roar caused blinding spears of light to fly. Cyril was amazed. Where did she get such power from? The dragon replied that she didn't know. She could do it since birth. He was even more surprised. Since birth, he had probably seen only about 100 Baylor, but not a single one of them who could do something like this. Obviously, Baylor don't have such an ability. She said that if she uses this power, she gets very tired. Cyril replied that it was understandable. He didn't know where she got this power from, but it seemed to use up a lot of her energy. The dragon assumed that was probably true, but she wouldn't mind using it if her master wanted. She rearranged the letters in the word again, and he laughed and thanked her, but she shouldn't have strained herself like that. The next morning, he greeted the dragon and said that he was going to look for a job. What did she want to do in the meantime? Louise answered briefly. She would sleep. He said that he understood. Maybe they would take on some work after dinner, and until then, she could sleep as much as she wanted. He went to the city hall and thought that at first, he didn't know whether to believe her or not, but now he knew that it was true. Walking to the notice board, he thought that now that he had Louise, he could look for some delivery jobs. At that moment, someone called out to him. He turned around and was surprised to see a girl named Rose. She was the secretary of the guild he was expelled from. She said that she had been waiting for him to come. Cyril was surprised. Was that really true? The girl continued that they had a task especially for him. Would he mind listening to her? They settled down to talk more comfortably, and Cyril asked her why him. Rose replied that Lady Katerina had praised him. Something like that. He was very good. She added that not many free knights could be honored with such an honor. Cyril chuckled. Really? He was just trying very hard. Rose continued that that was why she decided that she could entrust this matter to him. Cyril asked what kind of task it was. The girl replied, searching for a person. Cyril was surprised. Do dragon knights do such things? The girl answered, of course, but this is not a normal job. He must keep everything in the strictest secrecy. The thing is, the princess herself has disappeared. Cyril was surprised. The princess? It seems that it is time for him to do some serious work. Rose apologized to him, but she could not reveal the details of this matter. He guessed it himself and asked, in other words, is this their future queen? And what about the task itself? The girl asked him, does he know Mount Himuya, the one located north of the city? Cyril confirmed that he knows this place and asked, is this where the task will be carried out? Rose continued that the convoy transporting the princess disappeared in the area of this mountain. At least, that's what they thought. Cyril was surprised. The convoy disappeared? He thinks not much time has passed since then. The girl confirmed that it was so. It happened last night. They do not know the details, and they are not particularly important. They need him to inspect the surroundings. That's all the task. What will he say to this? Does he agree? Cyril thought for a moment, and then answered that he agreed. He would take on this job. Returning home, he saddled Louise, and they set off. The dragon asked him, what was wrong? Why did he have such a complicated face? Cyril answered that the princess had disappeared without a trace. It was possible that she might already be dead. Of course, he was glad that he had been entrusted with such a task. If he could help with something, he would definitely help. But it was also a big responsibility. Louise rightly noted that it was useless to think about it now. She saw a mountain ahead of her and asked, are they heading to that mountain, right? Cyril answered that she was right, and added that he had taken a letter written by the princess. Cyril took it out and asked the dragon, would she be able to find her by smell? She replied that she was not very good at this, but she would try. The dragon sniffed it carefully. Cyril asked her, well, how is it? She answered that she felt it. He was surprised, right? She found her? Louise answered that the princess often used perfume. He chuckled like perfume then. The dragon continued that the smell of perfume is very strong, so it is easy to catch. Cyril heard that dragons have a good sense of smell, but this was the first time he used it in action. He told her to lead him. The dragon answered as her master wished. Having climbed to the very top of the mountain, Cyril noted that he would never have climbed it alone. What a climb! He praised the dragon that she is real gold. Louise was embarrassed. She was pleased to hear such words. She embarrassedly said that there was nothing special in it. She would always help him. She asked, like, by the way, this is work, right? Cyril, not understanding where she was going with this, answered positively. The dragon said that she wanted a reward. If she was very useful, he would have to reward her. He asked her again in surprise. Reward? She replied that he understood everything correctly. Cyril asked, what does she want? The dragon replied that she wants a lot of straw. If you spread it out properly, it will be very soft and warm for her to sleep on. Cyril was surprised. Is she sure? He will buy it, of course, but does she really need it? She happily jumped up and down, and he almost fell off her back. Louise exclaimed that she would give it her all then, and rushed forward. Cyril held on tightly to her, and remembered how the guild leader once told him not to show sympathy to common cattle. The people in that guild were too cruel. Suddenly, Louise braked so hard that Cyril almost fell off her back. He exclaimed, what happened? Why did she stop so abruptly? Louise calmly said that the princess was here, below. They were standing on the edge of the cliff. Cyril thought in fear. Did the princess fall from here? He looked closer and saw that at the very bottom of the pit lay the broken carriage of the princess. He assumed that maybe the girl was inside the carriage. Louise asked him if she should go down. Cellier asked if she could do it. The dragon answered that it was no problem and began to go down. When they were at the very bottom, he saw how the princess's guards were lying near the carriage and apparently were dead. He thought that everything here looked terrible, but where was the princess? Cyril approached the carriage, looked around, and saw on the surface the same coat of arms that was on the letter. Without a doubt, it was her carriage. He looked at the guards. Unfortunately, they were no longer able to be helped. He hoped that at least the princess was okay. Coming closer to the carriage, he realized that he could not get into it. Something invisible was preventing him from doing so. Cyril was surprised. What was it? The omnipresent Louise told him that it was a barrier. Selir was upset. What should he do now? The dragon calmly asked him, should she remove this barrier? He joyfully exclaimed that yes, she could do it. He asked her to remove the barrier immediately. She used her magical roar, and the barrier of the carriage cracked. Cyril thanked her from the bottom of his heart. How she helped him out. Louise laughed contentedly. Cyril pulled back the curtain of the carriage and saw the princess. She was lying with her eyes closed. He apprehensively approached her closer to check if she was breathing. The girl was breathing, and he did not visually detect any serious wounds. She was fine. Louise replied that the barrier protected her. Cyril touched the girl on the shoulder and addressed her by status. She opened her eyes, asked where she was. Then, realizing that there was a stranger next to her, she screamed. Who was he? How dare he climb into her cart? Cyril answered that she should calm down. He was not a robber. He was simply ordered to find her. She asked again, find? He briefly told her about what happened. She looked out of the cart. Sylar noticed that she reacted calmly to all this, which was quite unexpected. The girl asked if anyone else survived besides her. He answered her. Apparently no. She took this news calmly. Cyril offered her to get out of the cart. He would examine whether she was wounded or not. She suddenly exclaimed, but what about the soldiers? Cyril understood how she felt, but they needed to quickly deliver her to a safe place. The soldiers could be taken care of later. She agreed to his proposal and got out of the carriage. When the girl saw Louise, she said in surprise, "A dragon?" Kyler turned to Louise and asked if she could carry 2 people. She looked at him slyly and said the word straw. He laughed and promised to buy her at least a whole field. She noted that this was an excellent promise and invited them to ride on her back. Cyril understood the princess's fear, so he explained to her that the Baylor are a very calm species. She has nothing to be afraid of, but he will ask just in case. Is she okay? The girl was too melancholic. This alarmed Cyril. Cyril again asked what was bothering her. At this moment, she seemed to wake up and suddenly gasped. Cyril worriedly asked the princess what was wrong. She cleared her throat and asked him, so he's a dragon knight? Cyril answered that he was. She was interested in what guild he belonged to. He replied that he had none. The princess was surprised. How could that be? And how could such a talented person like him cope alone? He was surprised because she had just met him. How could she know what kind of person he was? The princess replied that the dragon's eyes showed how much she trusted him with all her heart, and that said a lot. Cyril was surprised. Is that true? Louise tactfully kept silent. The princess continued saying that she had heard that knights who were able to gain the trust of their dragons were the best. It was surprising that he was not a member of the guild. He looked at her, smirked, and said that there were reasons for that. When Cyril brought the princess to the place, Rose was amazed. Had he found her already? She asked the girl, "Is she a princess? Let them wait here for a while. She will call the authorities now." The princess hesitantly turned to Cyril. He looked at her questioningly. The girl continued that she would like to thank him. Is there any way she can repay him? Cyril replied that he would receive his reward from the customer, so she did not have to worry about it. The princess took out something and said that he did not mind. She would like him to take a handkerchief with her family crest. If he needed her help, he could see her by showing the handkerchief to the guards. She would try to help him in any way she could. Cyril bowed to her and replied that he was very grateful to her. He summed up in his mind that the saving the princess operation had also gone off without a hitch. Rosa came out with the guild leader and handed Cyril the reward. They said goodbye to the princess and immediately went to get the reward. Cyril had a plan, when he received the reward, to thank the dragon because he had promised her. He shook the bag and said that there was 1,000 lyre in it. What a reward! Louise called out to him and offered him to buy hay. He thought about it. She reminded him he had promised. He said that he was talking about straw, although let her not worry about it. Now they will go and buy everything. He was just thinking. After all, a person can live for a month on 1,000 lyre and not worry about anything. MC conspiratorially told the dragon that they could buy something better than hay and straw. That's what he was getting at. The dragon was surprised. Better than hay and straw? He was lying. There couldn't be anything better. But what was that? Cyril replied that he meant a soft feather bed, or something else, but it would be better if she saw it with her own eyes. Cyril asked her, "Are they going?" She said, "He's even asking. Of course they'll go." Louise noted that this store had everything to take care of them, dragons. Cyril agreed that there were even toys, but she didn't seem to be interested in them. He suggested that she come in here. Louise agreed with him. They were about to go into the store when someone said something like, "Hey, wow, that's liar." Cyril looked back at the voice and saw Louis, a knight from his old guild, Lindworm. Louise asked him if he was surprised. Cyril didn't have time to answer him. The knight noted that he was not surprised like him. He returned from a mission, and it turns out he was kicked out. Cyril objected. He left himself. Louise said, "What a pity. Maybe he should put in a good word for him. He would whisper to the right people, and maybe they would take him back." Cyril couldn't believe his ears. Since when did he start helping others? That was definitely an unprecedented rarity. Moreover, he was not at all eager to return. Louis replied, like, that's what he was talking about. Well, for starters, he would have to take back his words. Solaire asked, "What other words?" The guy reminded him about the ones he said. Did he forget or something? About the feelings of dragons or something like that? If he goes back on his word, he can easily return him to the guild. After all, they'd be sorry to lose such a capable knight? Cyril chuckled. What's there to think about? He'll never give up his beliefs, Louis remarked, so he shouldn't get so worked up. Is he even in his right mind? What can he do alone? Cyril replied that he could do anything if he tried. Louis sighed and replied that he was wasting his time with him. At that moment, Louise asked her master what they could talk about for so long. And where was her feather bed? Cyril apologized to her and added that his interlocutor didn't want her to sleep 12 hours a day. That's how it was. Louise got mad. What did he say? Flaring her nostrils, she menacingly said to Louis, "What did he say?" The guy got scared and asked Solaire what's wrong with his dragon. What is he doing? Let him calm his animal down. Cyril objected. He did nothing. Or maybe it seemed to him that he ordered his dragon to attack him. Louis admitted that he did not order anything, cursed, and added that Solaire was always like this. And what kind of magic does he use anyway? Cyril replied that it was so obvious. He just appreciates dragons. Louis smirked doubtfully and left them alone. He walked and was indignant, saying, "Again, Cyril with his nonsense." Louise asked, "What's wrong with this guy?" Solaire replied that they simply could not agree with each other. Never mind. Whatever he said, as long as they were together, she could sleep for 12 hours. He guaranteed her that. They finally entered the store. The seller greeted them and noted that he came with a belower. Was he looking for something specific? Cyril replied that he was looking for a feather bed for his girl. The seller said as he wished and asked permission to show them the way. When he showed them the assortment of goods they were interested in, Louise was amazed. Does such a thing really exist? And she kept exclaiming, "Wow, wow!" She dove into one of the feather beds and began to tumble around in it. Cyril called out to her. She shouldn't have behaved like that. The dragon settled down on the feather bed more comfortably and said that she was going to fall asleep now. Cyril apologized to the seller. He didn't know what came over her. The merchant smiled and told him not to worry. They could try any of the goods on display. Solaire thanked him. He was now calm. He noted that Louise had taken a liking to the pillow. Cyril asked, "Is this a slime pillow?" The seller replied that he was right. People also use it as a bed. This pillow has the elasticity of a slime and is considered the most suitable for a comfortable sleep. Louise admired it. She liked it very much. It was much nicer than any hay. Cyril asked the merchant how much this pleasure cost. He answered that this pillow cost 1,200 lira. Cyril thought that it was quite expensive. He asked Louise if she really liked it. The dragon answered that she only wanted it, but then she became serious and asked if it was too expensive. Was he sure? Cyril smiled and said that the main thing was that she liked it. The dragon was happy and emotionally thanked him. Solaire told the merchant that he was taking this pillow. The man thanked him and added that it was very unusual. Cyril asked what exactly was unusual. The merchant had heard that among the dragon knights, there were those who could talk to dragons, and he had the impression that he was one of them. Cyril admitted that this dragon was like a family member to him. He paid for the pillow, and they left the store. The seller invited them to visit his store again. Cyril watched Louise and was happy. He never thought that she would like this pillow so much. He apologized for making her carry the purchase. Wasn't it hard for her? Louise looked at him and asked him to answer. Was he really happy? Celia was surprised. Why did she do this all of a sudden? She noted that it was too late to talk about it, but 1,200 lira was much more than he received for saving the princess. She thought that she was acting too selfishly. Cyril did not let her finish. He told her not to worry. He promised her. She remembered he was able to earn it only thanks to her. She helped him out a lot, so she deserved a reward. The dragon smiled and thanked her master. A few days later, Cyril told the dragon that they had done a great job today. She remained silent. Cyril became worried. Why was she silent? What had happened? She replied that she wanted to sleep. He realized that she was very tired after work, but there was nothing he could do. He still had to collect the reward. He thought for a while and exclaimed that an idea had occurred to him. He had promised that she would be able to sleep as long as she wanted. Would she be able to walk home alone? The dragon replied that she could. Then he sent her home and added that he would catch up with her. The dragon asked, was he serious? Cyril replied positively. She had done a good job today. Louise agreed with him and trudged home. Cyril watched her go and thought that their town was quiet, so Louise should not have gotten into trouble. However, if you think about it, the only one who could send the dragon home alone is him, the one who understands the dragon language. He hoped that nothing bad would happen. Louise walked and openly yawned. He thought that with him, the dragons could even work alone. Maybe it was worth buying another dragon. At that moment, the creaking of wheels was heard, and Cyril saw a carriage passing by in which a girl was sitting and eating dessert. And opposite her was a dragon in a cage. He was hungry and looked at the street. What was the dragon looking at through the bars of the cage? Cyril came to the dragon shop again. The seller greeted him, then asked if he had recently bought a baler from him. Celia replied that he had. Not long ago, he had bought a gift for Louise to thank her for the work she had done, and now an idea had occurred to him, which is why he went to the dragon shop. He thanked the seller for Louise. The man became embarrassed and said that he should thank him for the purchase. He asked how the dragon was doing. Cyril replied that she was doing well. He should relax. He would not return her. They get along well and often work together. He continued that he came to him for another reason. He would like to buy another dragon. The merchant was happy and thanked Cyril for choosing his shop. Cyril confessed to him that he had recently made a very expensive purchase, so he is now broke. The seller expressed his regret to him. Celia asked him if he had any more dragons in the same price range. The seller did not have such dragons. Cyril was upset. He rushed into the store without thinking. What did he expect? He turned to the seller, said that he was in no hurry, and if he had a similar dragon, let him contact him. Cyril took out a piece of paper to write his address, and something fell out of his bag. The seller apologized and noticed that something had fallen. Cyril bent down to pick up the princess's fallen scarf. The seller, noticing the fallen item, was surprised to see the royal coat of arms on the letter. He asked Cyril in amazement, was this the coat of arms of the royal family? Cyril replied that it was. He recently took a task and saved the princess. As a reward, he was given this scarf. The merchant seemed to have been replaced. He addressed Celir as a dear customer and said that he could give him a discount. The astonished protagonist asked if he was sure of his decision. The man exclaimed, "Everything for the sake of customers." Celir understood everything. The seller wanted to have connections with a person who knew the princess, so he was doing him such a favor. He said that he would be happy to accept his offer. They went to the dragons. The seller asked him if he had any specific requests. Cyril said that he was interested in Sirush. These are small dragons with 4 stomachs, 3 of which are not used for their intended purpose, and are a kind of warehouses. The more things Sirushes absorb, the more they swell, resembling a balloon. When they entered the enclosure with the dragons, Cyril crouched down in front of one, greeted her, and introduced himself. Colette said, "Wow, a human is talking to her. Is he stupid?" and turned away from him. Cyril asked, "Doesn't she want to talk to people?" The dragon answered that it was so. Then Cyril asked her why she did not want to communicate. Sirush noted that even if she answered, he still would not understand her. At that moment, it dawned on her what was happening. She asked Cyril in amazement, did he really understand her? But why? How could this be? Cyril replied that he had been like this since birth. He was thinking about buying her. What did she think about it? The dragon reasonably noted that he would have bought her, and that was it. Cyril was surprised. Was she sure? Colette irritably said, "What difference does it make? All people are terrible, worse than animals." Cyril answered. He spoke to her to find out her opinion. If she did not want to, then he would not buy her. The dragon could not believe what she heard. Cyril continued. If she still agreed, then they would leave here together. Colette asked why he wanted to buy her. Cyril noted that, of course, she would work with him. But what was more important was that she was very sweetful. Colette was indignant. What was the man talking about? Then she thought about it and said that she had one condition. He would not give her a new name. She had received her name before she hatched and introduced herself to him. Cyril replied that she had a very beautiful name, and he did not mind her condition. He extended his hand to her and asked if she was going with him. The dragon hesitated, then noted that there was nothing to be done. So be it. She would go with him. Only let him not make up things for himself, and let him not think that she liked him. He could call her Colette. Cyril agreed to this. He liked her name. He only added that he was counting on her. Cyril signed a check for payment and headed home with his purchase. He noticed that it was still light outside and asked Colette if she would mind stopping by somewhere on the way home. It was a place where they would go with her for work. She asked again, for work? He took her to a quarry where there was a lot of ore and told her that he wanted her to collect this ore. Colette looked at it and noted that the ore was very beautiful. Cyril explained to her that this was Mount Milrif, where there were natural deposits of cobanium. It is used in many places, so it can be easily sold in the city. He wanted her to fill her stomachs with it and bring it to the city. Colette understood everything and began to absorb the ore. He asked her if she was okay. She answered that she could handle it. Cyril thanked her and noted that he really appreciated it. The dragon said that it was a very simple job. Cyril explained that of all the dragons, only she could do it. But would she do it without his supervision? Colette replied that she had no problem. Then she asked in amazement, how is that possible without supervision? Salir continued that the task was not as simple as she thought. He wanted her to collect ore here and take it to the trading post in the city. He hoped that she could do it on her own, of course. To the best of her ability, the dragon was surprised she herself and he would not keep an eye on her. Cyril smiled and replied that he would not watch her. She was even more surprised, and if she shied away from work, hadn't he thought about that? Cyril laughed and replied that he trusted her. She asked, was he a fool? He just knew that she could be trusted. That's why. Colette was very touched by his trust and said that she would do it for him. The shop was very surprised when they heard his proposal, but still agreed to cooperate. Meanwhile, Colette started working and carried the ore without his supervision. She did everything as he asked her. Cyril praised her and brought her home. He asked her if she would mind sleeping in the garden. It was certainly not luxurious, but still it was better than nothing. Colette answered that it was still better here than in the basement of the shop. She noticed the sleeping Louise and asked if he had another dragon. Cyril said that she had noticed correctly and said that the dragon's name was Louise. Meanwhile, Louise woke up, saw Colette, and asked who it was. Cyril apologized to her for waking her up. She replied that she felt the presence of another creature, perhaps her. She pointed at Colette. He noted that everything was correct. Let her forgive him that everything happened so suddenly, but he bought another dragon. Colette asked her if her name was Louise, and she told her her name. Louise understood her and added that she had also been bought recently and expressed hope that they would become friends. They looked around. Louise noted that they would be living here together. Colette answered that that was indeed the case. They told Cyril that it was a bit cramped for two. He understood this himself. The dragons continued that they did not mind staying here for a while, especially as long as they could sleep here. Colette asked Louise if she liked to sleep. In that case, she would re-educate her. They laughed. Cyril, watching them, thought that they, of course, said that they did not mind, but still it was really cramped here. He should think about moving. The next day, the three of them went about their business. Louise yawned openly. Colette grinned. She was such a sleepyhead. She answered that she wanted to sleep. Cyril noted that there was nothing wrong with that. Colette asked him if he had taken her, even knowing about her peculiarity. He replied that it was true. He had promised her that he would let her sleep 12 hours a day. If he had not been able to talk to dragons, he would not have known that she liked to sleep. The same was true for her, Colette. That was why he had not given her a new name. Colette said that they had been brought together by fate itself. Then she snorted that he had bought her because she was cheap. Cyril did not deny it. Suddenly, Colette stopped and looked at the bakery. Cyril asked her what was going on. She shook her head and told him not to pay attention. But she was looking at something. The dragon snapped that she had not looked at anything. Let him leave her alone. Then she sternly asked why they were all standing. She went to work. Having said goodbye to them, she left. Louise answered her back saying, they will see each other. Cyril also wished her a safe journey. He wondered what she was looking at. Then he saw a bakery shop with all sorts of desserts and wondered if Colette was looking at them. After work, he praised Louise and said that he had one little thing to do. Would she wait for him a little? He went into the dragon shop again. The seller greeted him. Cyril also greeted him and asked him if his dragon had already visited him. The merchant took out a bag of money and said that she had left it. The main character smiled and noted that she did bring it after all. The thing is, he asked Colette to bring her first earnings here. He apologized to the seller. It was not that much, but he would like to pay for the installment plan. Colette would bring him money from time to time. The seller replied that he understood him. However, he was amazed. How could he entrust his dragon with such a difficult task? Besides, the dragon does all this without his supervision. Probably he has an amazing talent. Cyril was embarrassed, saying that he was flattering him. The seller added that he was not only a good dragon knight, but also a wonderful person. To Cyril's surprise, he replied that he could not even think that he would pay so soon. Many people delay the payment for a long time, which causes a lot of trouble. Cyril answered him that this was the least he could do for his kindness. He hoped for a long-term cooperation with him. He takes very good care of the dragons, which he really likes. The seller said that dragons are his valuable goods, so he keeps an eye on them. He came to his senses and asked Cyril. He bought a second dragon. Is there enough space for them? Cyril replied that they fit, more or less, but he is a very perceptive person. The man said that there were a couple of places to rent out for keeping dragons in their city. There was a stable for 2 dragons, and there was a stable for several creatures. As he said, only 2 places. Cyril noted that he was a very knowledgeable person. The merchant continued that he would vouch for him. He could not worry, but there was one detail. Cylir asked what the detail was. The man knew that he would be interested in his offer. It was a new building, but for some reason, the dragons did not like it. The stable was very wide. So many dragon knights would like to move there with their dragons. However, for some reason, the dragons refused to enter inside. When Cyril came to the place with his dragons, they were amazed by the size of the buildings. Colette asked, "Will they live here?" Louise noted that this house looked decent. Cyril said that people did not often rent it for a long time, let alone buy it, so it was rented out at a very cheap price. He would like to hear their opinion and find out what the problem with this barn was. He walked a little further and said that this house was for him and this barn was for them. Louise noticed the huge size of the barn. He invited them to go inside. When they did, Cyril looked around and said that there was nothing unusual here. But what did they think? Cylir saw how his dragons tensed up. He called out to them and asked what they felt. They answered that they did not like this place, explaining this by the fact that there was a terrible smell in this place. Cyril was surprised. The smell? Only dragons can smell it? He wondered where it was coming from. Louise thought that it all came from the floor. Cyril was even more surprised. From the floor? From the ground? The dragons could not stay in this barn any longer and left it. Cylir was perplexed. What was that smell? Louise answered that she had a feeling that dragons were being killed in this place. Colette added that this place probably absorbed this smell. Cyril was puzzled. It seems that something terrible happened here. That's why the dragons don't like this place. Maybe it was worth changing the soil here then? He asked Colette if she could bring other soil here. For example, from the fields? She answered that she could easily carry it in her stomach. Cyril turned to Louise and suggested that she take a rest. The soil here needed to be dug up, and he was going to do it. After some time, the allies did what they had planned. They changed all the soil in the barn. Cyril, tiredly wiping his forehead, said that it took him the whole day. He asked the dragons how they felt in this barn now. Louise joyfully exclaimed that it was good here now. She really liked it. Colette picked up her delight and noted that her work was not in vain. Cyril was pleased with their reactions, didn't like the dirt, but now everything is fine. He stood up and announced that since they liked it here now, they were moving here. The dragons were very happy that this was a very wide barn, just like a palace. Louise was especially delighted because she could sleep here to her heart's content, which she was incredibly happy about. Cyril smiled and told his girls that it was all thanks to them, but he especially noted Colette. She tried very hard. She was pleased with the praise of the owner. Cyril said that he had a gift for her and invited her to see what it was. He pulled back the curtain from the pastry case, and the dragon's gaze opened to an amazing picture for her in the form of various buns and a large cake. Louise asked in surprise, "Human sweets?" Cylir asked Colette she was looking at them then. He thought that she loved them very much, so he ordered a large cake just right for her. Colette asked in amazement, "Is this all for her?" Louise asked her seriously, "Does she like all this?" and called her friend a weirdo. Colette was embarrassed, pretended to be irritated, and was indignant that, in fact, she didn't really like all this. She didn't like any sweets at all, but her ears resonated with the anticipated pleasure. She said that their life was not a bed of roses. Why should all this food go to waste? So be it. She would eat it all. A minute later, there was no trace left of all the culinary delights. Sometime later, after another order, Cyril came to collect the payment. Rose admired his quality and speed. He replied that there was nothing unusual about it. The girl thanked him for the excellent work he had done. He had helped them out. As if, by the way, she asked him if he had bought a second dragon. Cyril did not deny it, and the girl explained her curiosity to him. Free knights can't often afford even one dragon, but he bought two, and he is a very hard-working knight. Cyril thanked her for her kind words. She asked if he was okay with it. Noticing Cyril's puzzled look, she explained that he hadn't thought about joining a guild. He noted that when he became a vagabond, he tried different things, but after being expelled from the Lindworm Guild, he understood a lot about this world. Most guilds know. Almost all dragon knights think the same way. For them, dragons are just tools, but he treats them completely differently. A mediocre attitude towards these creatures is alien to him. The girl apologized to him. She knew that he was not eager to join a guild, but maybe he would be interested in something else. Cyril asked what she meant. She lowered her voice and spoke conspiratorially. Let him just imagine. He confounded himself, found his own guild. She explained that a guild is an organization recognized by the country. In this case, it is the Guild of Dragon Knights. Dragons and dragon knights are special, and the attitude towards them is also special. She asked him if it is possible to start creating his guild. He thought about her words, and she continued that from a particularly large one: taxes. He asked her, something like income tax? She answered that this too. The tax on the livestock of dragons is also reduced. When a person has several dragons, the difference is very noticeable. Cyril noted that he did not know about the tax on livestock. Rose continued that depending on the strength of the guild, the abilities of dragons can also increase slightly. This surprised Cyril very much. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Is this true?" The girl answered that it was so. At the highest level of the guild, the dragons become 10% stronger. It is not much, of course, but still better than nothing. Cyril said that even 10% is already great. He asked her how it works. The girl shrugged. She did not really understand it either. It is somehow connected with the agreement between the King of the Gods, Romancia, and the King of the Dragons, MN. At least, that's what they say, but she herself probably did not know. Cyril noted that it turns out that guilds have their advantages, and what is needed to find your own. The girl answered that first, you need an official observer. If anything, she can become his observer, so there will be no problems with this. The main character thanked her for this. She continued that a deposit will also be needed. This is not so simple. It is necessary to prepare 10,000 lire. Cyril said in surprise that this is a rather large amount. Having said this, he opened his bag and poured out the coins, his earnings, in front of her. She could not believe it. He explained to her that just yesterday Colette had found a rare ore. She came from the mine, showed him the stone, and said that there was this strange stone among the ore. It really looked very strange. Now it was like this, and in the morning when she found it, it was a completely different color. He was interested. A stone that changed colors? Cyril decided to take it to the appraiser the next day. The appraiser said that it was a 4-color polylite. Cyril asked him if this stone was rare. The appraiser said that it was indeed so, and asked how about 10,000 lire for it. Cyril sold this thing. That's where the money comes from. Rose counted the money. The amount was correct. She said that it was incredible. He was very lucky. He grinned and noted that he did not expect to spend it all so quickly. Rose asked him if she was applying for a guild. Cyril agreed to this. She handed him the application form for him to fill out. He wrote down what was required, the name of the representative, the address, the number of dragons, and their types. Rose noted that it was necessary. The name of the guild was needed. This was perhaps the most important. Without thinking for long, he wrote down the name, which surprised the girl very much. Dragon First. He explained because the name should reflect the essence of the guild. Rose replied, "So be it." She was accepting the application. At that moment, a golden glow appeared on the paper. From it, a small creature with wings like a butterfly appeared. Cyril was very surprised. "Girl!" Rose explained that this is the guild fairy. At least that's what they call them. She is something like an ID. Cyril was amazed by this fact. He looked at the fairy. She was silent and blinked often, looking at him. He asked what he should do with her. Rose answered that she would follow him herself, so he did not need to do anything. The fairy fluttered up and sat on his bag. The girl told him to treat it with care. She put some box on the table, opened it, and showed it to Cyril. He was amazed. Were they collars and bracelets? She confirmed that they were, and added that these were devices for measuring the strength of dragons. The guild rank would increase depending on the readings. He remembered that in Lindworm, dragons wore all this. He expressed doubt. The girl asked him, what was the matter? Cyril answered that he did not want to put all these collars on his dragons at all. Rose thought about it, then answered that he could go to the dragon workshop. There were many things there besides collars. After some time, Cyril asked his girls what kind of jewelry they would like. Dragons were surprised. Jewelry? He explained that he had been to the dragon's workshop and had seen everything there. Earrings, bows, and everything the heart desires. He asked them, what would they like to wear from this? The dragons thought about his question, what would they like to wear? Louise thoughtfully said that she would like a sleeping bag. Cyril was surprised. What was she talking about? A sleeping bag. He didn't think there were sleeping bags for dragons, and it could hardly be called an accessory. Louise thought about it and exclaimed that then she would like an eye mask. Cyril thought about it. He assumed that they would sew it to order for him, but was she sure that she just wanted a mask? Louise answered that he understood everything correctly. He said in response, then she would have to wear it all the time. She was glad that would be good. Would it bother her? Cyril had to agree to her wish. Then he asked Colette, what did she want? Maybe something special. Colette thought about it, hummed, and said that she would like a ribbon, or something similar to a ribbon. He agreed to her wish, asking her what kind of ribbon she would like. She smiled and said that she would like a cute ribbon. Cyril thought with warmth that she was such a girly girl. But if he told her that, she would start to get embarrassed again. So he answered that he understood everything and would go to the workshop tomorrow to discuss the order. When the shop owner took Louise's measurements, she clarified that she would make everything to size. She also named the sum of 100 lire and asked if Cyril would be satisfied with that amount. He was satisfied, but he asked her to make 2, so that 1 would be in reserve. The shopkeeper understood everything and said that she would give the appropriate orders. In a few days, everything would be ready. Cyril thanked her. When they left the workshop, he asked the dragon if everything was okay. Louise happily answered that everything was okay. She was very happy. He looked at her collar and thought that they were both wearing collars temporarily, and both of them put them on without resistance. But he didn't like it at all. She turned to him and said that she didn't really think he would agree to an eye mask. Sealer was surprised. She wanted it, so there was no reason to refuse. Louise thanked her master with a satisfied look. At that moment, something lit up in his bag. When he looked to see what was going on, he saw that the guild card was lit up. He looked closely and realized that his guild level had risen to the 2nd. He was amazed what had happened. Everything was so sudden and incomprehensible. Cyril came to Rose, explained the situation to her, and asked if the guild level was really rising that fast. The girl looked puzzled. She replied that he had registered a guild of 1 person and 2 dragons. Usually in such cases, it takes about a month to rise to the 2nd level. He realized that he was the only one in the guild, which meant that if there were more people, the level would grow faster. He doubted that there must have been some mistake. Rose asked him to wait a bit and left. When she returned, she was surprised to notice that there were no mistakes and no oddities. Cyril asked again in amazement, oddities. She explained, for example, that it happens that a knight rents a dragon and only binds it to the guild for a while. The guild level increases, and the dragon is returned to its owner. There are people here who try to make money in a dishonest way. Cyril understood everything. Rose added, so if his guild moved to the 2nd level, then she congratulates him on it. He thanked her and asked if anything changes with the increase in level. The girl answered that it does, and asked him to give the guild girl a clean sheet of paper. When Cyril did what Rose asked, the fairy flew out of the bag. Barely touching the paper, she began to draw something on it. He wondered what she was drawing there. Rose told him to just watch her. When the fairy finished drawing, he was amazed to notice that it was a map of the city where they were. In the very center of the map, something was glowing. The girl explained that it was a map where his registered dragons were visible. He saw that it was glowing right next to the administration building, which meant that Louise was here. Cyril noted that this was very convenient, but Rose did not see another of his dragons on the map. She asked about this. Cyril replied that Colette was on Mount Milrif, so she was not on the map. The girl was amazed. He was sending them alone on errands. He could even do that? She added that if you need Mount Milrif, you can move the map with your fingers in the right direction. Cyril was surprised. The scale of the map changed. That was cool. Moving the map, Rose pointed to the 2nd glowing dot and said that this dot was Colette. The girl added that with the increase in level, many convenient chips will appear. Let him try. Cyril was still admiring the map, then asked her why the level increased this time. Rose answered that she did not quite understand how it works yet. It is very unusual. At that moment, Colette arrived. Xelir greeted her. She asked her master what happened. Was he waiting for her on purpose? He answered that one convenient thing fell into his hands here, and he thought that she was just going home. Cyril continued, he has something for her. Colette was interested in what kind of package. What is in it? Cyril took out the ribbon she asked for from the package. Her joy knew no bounds. Cyril noted that the mask for Louise would not be made soon, but there were a lot of ribbons on sale. Colette was so delighted she swallowed the endings of words. Her whole appearance expressed complete delight in her decoration. Cyril pinned the ribbon on her ear and noted that it would certainly be beautiful. Before he could remove his hand, Colette was gone. He exclaimed, "Where is she?" The dragon returned almost instantly. Cyril happily said that he was right. This decoration suited her very well. She asked embarrassedly, "Is he telling the truth?" He laughed, answered that it was true, and added that she was very beautiful. Colette was completely embarrassed, but pretended to be angry and noted that she already knew this, in fact. Cyril agreed with her. She thanked her owner with a smile. At that moment, the light appeared from the bag again. Cyril took out the card. It was glowing again. He noted that the level did not seem to change. So what was the matter? Sylar looked at Colette, who was extremely pleased with the gift, and thought, maybe the happier the dragons are, the more experience the guild accumulates. What awaited Sylar and the dragons in the created guild? After some time, Cyril, sitting astride Louise, opened the map and said that it was only morning and Colette was already busy. Louise replied that she wanted to show herself in business. She giggled all night yesterday. She even got scared. Surely she remembered how he raised her. Louise was wearing an eye mask on her head, which she wanted so much. Cyril thought, was Colette so happy? She earns very well for them, so he praised her. Then, too, her power meter ribbon and guild card were shining. Perhaps his assumption was correct. Louise also happily wears the mask that was recently sewn for her. Lost in his thoughts, he didn't even notice how Louise brought him to the mayor's office. He told her that he would go and take the task. Louise stayed outside to wait for her master. When Cyril approached the notice board, he was surprised to see the Lindworm Certificate of Honor. It said that considering the merits of the last year, the kingdom expresses special gratitude to the Lindworm Guild. Cyril thought about his former guild, that they had different views, but he was still delighted, and clients feel more comfortable contacting guilds with a good reputation. He said that they should also try to get a similar document. At that moment, laughter was heard from behind him. Louis was standing behind him, who told him not to even dream about it. He heard that Cyril founded his own guild. An organization of one person will never be awarded. He cannot even dream about it. In Lindworm, after receiving this certificate, the number of people wishing to join it increased. Even a few B-rank knights with good achievements behind them. Cyril knew that the knights' ranks also changed depending on their achievements. B-rank knights were quite famous and had a lot of achievements. He said out loud that it was not bad. Louis noted that if he had only stayed in Lindworm a little longer, he would have been on the way of 2. Cyril thought that all this was of course great, but he really didn't want to go back to them. Coming out of the city hall, Cyril saw a crowd of people who were excitedly talking about something. He thought, what was going on? Why was it so noisy? Cyril approached the people and asked, did something happen here? One guy answered him that a dragon had escaped. Killer was surprised. Had it escaped? The guy added that it was making a ruckus there. They were trying to catch it, but it was unclear where this dragon was now. Cyril thanked him for the answer and thought that this was the first time he had heard of a dragon escaping. Of course, he wanted to find out more about this case, but he noticed that Louise looked very sleepy. He did not want to torment her. He told her that he would quickly go to the administration, report everything, and return. Louise meekly agreed with him. Before Cyril had time to go to the porch, a dragon appeared in front of him and knocked him down. He scratched the top of his head and thought, what is this? Suddenly the dragon called him by name and asked him for help. He was surprised to recognize her as Emma, the dragon from Lindworm. She begged, since she could not stay there anymore. He looked around, noticed that this was not the best place for a conversation, and offered her to follow him. Louise was also supposed to follow him. When they arrived at Cyril's house, he clarified, she was Emma, right? The dragon was amazed. Did he remember her? He answered positively and added that he remembered everyone he talked to there then. A Soom dragon. She belonged to the Lindworm Guild. Soom are small dragons, even among small breeds, but their combat abilities surpass many, and therefore they are in almost all guilds. He asked her why she ran away. She hesitated with an answer, but still said that she had recently been feeling unwell, and made it clear that she should be allowed to rest, but in vain. She was said to work through force, and there she almost broke all her bones and failed completely. If only this were all right, but the guildmaster adhered to the rule. A dragon that had once been guilty was no longer good for it. If she failed again, she must be driven to death or destroyed. Cyril clearly remembered how this master had once told him the same thing. She sighed sadly, saying that nothing had changed, and this despite the fact that people knew that dragons understood human speech. And still, saying such things in front of her was the height of stupidity. She continued. She had heard a rumor that Sealer came to the dragon's stable every day, so she waited there for him. She again turned to him with a plea and asked him to hide her here. Sealer thought about the dragon's transfer between guilds. I wonder if Lindworm will agree to negotiate. Suddenly they heard a knock. Cyril assumed that it was from the gate. Emma asked fearfully, "Pursuers?" Cyril stroked her head and told her not to worry. Everything will be fine. Let her trust him. He will take her from them. He opened the gate. There stood Louis, who irritably asked, "Is he with his dragon? Is he right?" He learned everything from a witness. Cyril replied that if he was asking about Emma, then he has her. Louis exclaimed that he should quickly bring her to him. He will take her home. Cyril calmly offered to buy the dragon from him. Louis frowned. Was he serious? He thinks he'll just give him the escaped dragon? Cyril retorted. The guildmaster told him to drive her to death, right? The guy was surprised. From whom could he have learned about this? Sealer irritably replied that there is no smoke without fire. He cannot return this dragon to such a master. Let him go and tell him about his offer. He offers them a trade. Louis got angry, but who will listen to him? He forcefully pushed Cyril away, ran to the barn, and shouted at Emma to come out to him. They are going back. Let her not delay with the exit. At that moment, Louis stood in front of him. Louis exclaimed, "What is this? What an ambush!" Louis angrily said that he is her master's enemy. Let him die, and activated her skill. Louis was thrown aside. He was indignant. "What is this?" Cyril asked. What did he expect? Uninvited guests are always and everywhere greeted the same way. Guy was so angry that he couldn't even find an answer. Cyril repeated his request to convey his words to his master. Louis threatened him that he would get his way. After some time, Dickie Rush, the master of the Lindworm Guild, came to him. When they sat down at the negotiating table, the master said that he had been conveyed his offer. So, he wants to buy out their dragon? Cyril replied that he had been conveyed everything correctly. He couldn't just watch them drive her to death. Dickie chuckled, so that's what motivated him. Cyril noted that he himself could see everything perfectly well. The master said that this dragon would no longer bring any benefit to their guild. And nevertheless, it was Lindworm's property. He couldn't just give it away. Sylar asked him how much he needed to pay. Dickie replied that he was not interested in money. When a person asks for something, then it is still necessary to understand your situation. Cyril, without thinking twice, fell to his knees, bowed to the master, and repeated his request after a please. Dickie was amazed by Cyril's devotion to the dragons, chuckled, and replied that he could do whatever he wanted, after which he silently left. Cyril exhaled, opened the door. His dragons were standing behind it. He noticed that Colette had already returned. She asked about the master. He was an enemy, right? Louise asked if everything was okay with the owner. Emma addressed him by name and looked at him with a silent question in her eyes. He smiled, said that no matter what, the negotiations took place, and now Emma is free. The dragon was very happy with his news and warmly thanked him. He asked her what she would do now. Maybe she would like to go somewhere. She answered that she did not want to go anywhere. She wanted to come to him. Cyril grinned and said, "Welcome to them." To their team, Emma was incredibly happy with his invitation. At that moment, all three dragons were illuminated with light. Sylar was surprised. What was it? The dragons were also amazed. Were they glowing? Cyril's hand seemed to be drawn to the ground. He thought, was something calling him? He picked something up from the ground, and when he opened his palm, he was surprised to see a ring that was glowing. The dragons looked at the thing with no less surprise. They could not believe their eyes, and almost in chorus exclaimed that it was an artifact. Cyril asked again in surprise. An artifact? Emma answered that it was called the secret treasure of the dragons. A long time ago, the dragon lord MN, with the help of the king of the gods, created it. They say that it appears only in the hands of the one who is loved by the dragons. Sailor thoughtfully said who the dragons love. He turned to his girls and said, "Dragon Lord Amen, except for his name, nothing has been heard of him. Do they know anything about him?" Louise replied that she didn't know much. They say he was the Lord when dragons ruled this world. His voice could enchant any living being. Even the king of the gods, Romanzir himself, was his ardent admirer. Cyril noted, "Oh, this world of legends." But he saw the artifact for the first time. The dragons also had not encountered anything like this. Cyril asked them in surprise. If they were seeing it for the first time, how did they know that this was it? Emma answered that they just knew. It was like an instinct. Sylar examined the artifact again and thought that he saw an ordinary ring in it, but if all three dragons instinctively recognized it, it was probably a real treasure. Cyril began to speak and fell silent. The dragons asked him what he meant. What did he want to say? Cyril answered that since it was a dragon's treasure, it would be better if the dragons owned it, wouldn't it? He offered Colette to wear it in her belly, for example. Colette categorically refused his offer. She exclaimed with fear that she would not do it. She will swallow the artifact. What if it curses her? Cyril looked puzzled. Emma said that there are many reasons why dragons cannot take it. He was amazed at how valuable it was. Then he decided that the artifact would be his. Cyril put the ring on his finger and thought about its effect. He asked the dragons if they felt anything. They answered negatively. It also seemed to him that nothing had changed. At that moment, he looked at his girls and was surprised to see their condition indicators above their heads. They noticed his surprised face and asked what was going on. He answered that he seemed to understand everything. Colette asked what he understood. Let him explain everything to them too. Cyril turned to her and asked if she was feeling unwell today. She answered in surprise that she was fine. Cyril noted that the artifact showed him this information. Louise asked in amazement, "The artifact?" He replied that it was so. He saw two indicators above Louise and Emma's heads, and they indicate their physical form and psychological state. One of the indicators above Colette's head was very weak, so he told her she was the only one working. Of course, she would get tired. Cyril apologized to her. Colette was embarrassed and answered not very confidently that everything was fine. She felt fine. Cyril objected to her. She was smart and worked well, but he did not want her to get sick, so he would allow her to rest for a day tomorrow. He believed that the artifact had fallen into his hands so that he would not burden them too much. Colette finally could not contain her emotions and happily replied that she understood everything and that tomorrow, therefore, she would rest. Kyler looked at the ring and thought that it would not allow the dragons to overwork. For their guild, dragons above all, this is the best artifact. A few days later, late in the evening, Cyril heard a knock on the door. He thought, it's already night. Who could it be? Sildur opened the door and saw an unfamiliar young man there. He apologized for his late visit. It was Laurent Fleury and asked if he was Cillier. After Cyril confirmed his assumption, he apologized again for visiting so late. He added that they were not acquainted, told him his name, and said that he would like to ask him for one favor. Cyril asked why him. Laurent replied that he came on the recommendation of Lady Muriel. Cyril remembered Catherine and her task with a love letter and invited the guy into the house. He asked him what his request was. Laurent said that one of the Dragon Knight guilds was defeated in a campaign. Cyril was surprised. Usually campaigns are carried out against groups of monsters. Since it is dangerous, in case of success, the knight will receive wealth and glory. However, there are also victims. He asked how unsuccessful the campaign was. Laurent sadly said that the entire first squad, every single one had been destroyed. Cyril was amazed to note that he had not heard of anything like that for 5 years. Laurent continued that, according to the rules of that guild, everyone was required to write a will before going on a campaign. He would like to ask Cyril to collect these wills. Cyril is worried. Will he have enough strength to go to such a dangerous place? The guy replied that it was not a problem. That guild had created a second, reinforced army, so there was simply no one to collect the wills. This happened in the Danzig Valley. For completing the task, he would pay him 5,000 lire. Cillier replied that he understood everything and that he would take on this task. Laurent thanked him and added that when he would collect the wills, he could dispose of the things he found at his own discretion. Cyril said that he understood his words. The next day, getting ready for the journey, he analyzed that if he took into account the time for Louise to sleep, the one-way journey to the Danzig Valley would take 3 days. Louise turned to her master and asked him to listen to her. What did this young man mean by saying that he could do whatever he wanted with things? Cyril asked in surprise. Had she heard their conversation yesterday? The dragon did not deny it. He noted that she had very good hearing. He thought that meant that she could hear his every move. At that moment, Colette came up to them and listened to their conversation. Cyril explained that the field of the past battle was simply a mountain of treasure. Louise asked in surprise, "A mountain of treasure?" He explained that people go into battle in expensive armor and with good equipment. Therefore, taking this from the dead and selling it for a good price is considered a common thing. Colette shuddered at these words and said, "What a horror! People do this too." Cyril replied that it was. He had even heard of a poor guy who had been struck by the residual magic of an item. So, this activity was life-threatening. Colette chuckled. Selir continued saying that dragons and their knights often used ammunition that was much more expensive than that of ordinary warriors. Colette summed it up with distaste, which meant that it could be rephrased as taking it as a reward. Cyril replied that she was right and added that he did not like the idea. They set off, making stops because Louise was asleep and to rest themselves. Finally, after some time, they arrived at the place. Looking at the map, Cyril noticed that this was the very valley. They approached its edge and looked down. Everyone was shocked by the picture they saw. Cyril said, 20 people and 30 dragons, mountains of the dead, and a sea of blood. Colette shuddered and said that it was a terrible sight. Selir turned to Emma. It was easier for her to notice the enemy. How would she assess the situation around her? She replied that everything was fine. She did not feel any hostility. He unclenched his hand in which the capsule was lying and suggested that the dragons split up and look for such things from everyone. According to the customer, everyone should have them. The dragons were ready to work, and the allies split up. Colette went in the company of Cyril. She noted that, indeed, it was unpleasant work. She offered her a rest. She refused. Telling him that she would also work, nothing could be done. Cyril warmly thanked her. After a while, they all gathered at the departure point. Selir examined the capsules he found, noted that they were collected from everyone, and told Colette that now it was her turn. She collected all the items and asked, "Is that all?" The dragon suggested that everyone return home as soon as possible. She did not want to linger here at all. Cyril asked her to stay. He said that there was still work, or rather, a request. As the dragons pricked up their ears, they were ready to fulfill any of his requests. Cyril hesitated, then suggested that his girls bury these knights and dragons. They were surprised. Bury them? He replied that they understood everything correctly. Leaving everything like this was too cruel. Louise turned to him. He asked what? Still not worth it? She replied that it was not the point. She wanted to know, should they make graves for the dragons too? Cyril answered in the affirmative. She said that he was strange. She already knew it. But still, he was strange. Scott and Emma confirmed her words about his strangeness. Cyril replied that maybe so. Let them not be angry with him for having to spend their time with such an eccentric. Louise objected. He got it all wrong. Yes, he is strange, but very good. Tyler was very grateful to her. They returned home safely. Sometime later, Cyril received a letter from Rose, in which she asked him to urgently come to her. When he came, she apologized to him for calling him so abruptly. He replied that it was okay, but something happened since she sent him a letter on purpose. The girl told him sadly that his guild had already reached the 3rd level. Usually it takes about 3 months. Selir calmed down. Was that what she wanted to say? At that moment, the fairy of his guild flew out of the bag. She was very pleased. He thought she was giggling. Cyril looked at Rose and noticed that she somehow did not look very happy. Something happened? The girl replied, Not that it happened. It's just that a guild with 1 knight in such productivity is puzzling. They certainly set historical records. Cyril chuckled. Historical records? Until now, this was not his story at all. The girl noted that this is what she wanted to ask him about. What did he think? Was there some reason for this? Cyril thought about it. He did not see any reasons, except that he followed the principle in the name of the guild. He cares most about dragons. That's all. Rose did not think that this was somehow related, but did not pursue this topic further. She only added that since his guild had now reached the 3rd level, they could now use the utility room. This guild building looks like an ordinary warehouse, but it has a spell that does not let anyone inside, except for the knights and dragons of the guild. Cyril thought that it would be funny to try to combine this with Colette's abilities. There were people standing on the street, openly staring at him and talking about something. Cyril thought that everyone was already whispering about the rapid growth of his guild. Some were looking with interest, some with suspicion. He realized that this was not a very pleasant feeling. Approaching his house, he was surprised there was a carriage standing there. Coming closer, he heard someone calling him and was surprised to see the princess getting out of the carriage. The girl said that she was very glad to meet him. She had heard a lot about his activities. Cyril was amazed. His activities? She answered that it was so, or rather, about how he copes with various tasks and reached the 3rd level faster than anyone in history. He is now the main object of attention among the knights. Cyril was amazed. Is she serious? Passers-by began to pay attention to them, and Celia invited her into the house, away from prying eyes. They sat down at the table. He asked her what she had come for today. The princess answered that today she wanted to ask the best knight for a small favor. He was embarrassed and noted that she had praised him too much. The girl objected to him. He was wrong, and Cyril gave in. She continued that she would really like him to take care of a special dragon. He thought that since the princess was asking directly, it must be a serious matter, but he was not afraid. He was sure that he could handle her dragon. He still understood them. Out loud, he asked her if she thought he would do. The girl indignantly stopped him. She was talking about serious things. He answered that he understood everything and that he agreed to take her dragon. The princess was very happy with his answer and thanked him. Cyril asked her what kind of dragon it was. She folded her hands and said that it was a baby phoenix. Cyril was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe his ears. He asked her with hope. She wasn't talking about what else is called a divine child. She exclaimed that it was exactly that kind. He asked in amazement why she was assigning him such an important role. The girl blushed and hesitated with an answer. Cyril noticed that she was all blushing. Does she have a reason to be embarrassed? She said that she just wanted to see how he would mess around with a divine child. His amazement knew no bounds. What was she talking about? The princess immediately exclaimed that she was joking. In fact, the reason was simple. His guild was still small, and she thought that this would be a good investment in the future. Cyril relaxed and thanked her for her high assessment of his organization. That same day, they set off on their journey to the divine child. They were carried by Louise. The princess noted that she had ridden her before. It was surprising that they did not shake at all. She was delighted with their mutual understanding. Her guards followed them with a carriage. Cyril asked her if she was sure that such a ride was better for her than a carriage. The princess laughed and assured him that she even liked it. He was worried. Louise reassured him. If he wanted to impress her, she would walk very carefully. He answered her that she was very perceptive, and she said everything correctly. Cyril later turned to the girl and said, he found out a little here that the phoenixes have already died out, and he heard that there are no cubs anymore. She answered that he was right. Cyril was surprised. What did she mean? The princess told him that they say that there is only one divine child left on Earth now, and there is an ancient legend that they do not give birth to cubs, but are reborn after death. Cyril was amazed by her words. Louise noted that she had heard about it too. Emma picked up that, although they were dragons, they were superior to them in some ways. Colette added that they were completely invulnerable in life. The princess said admiringly that phoenixes were cool, weren't they? Cyril answered her that they were. She continued, however, sometimes several centuries passed before rebirth, and she thought that maybe he would be able to fulfill her request. Cyril doubted whether everything would be okay. He was amazed. So they were not talking about living dragons. 2 days later, they arrived at the place. Before their eyes stood a high mountain with a temple. Cyril noted that it was really impossible to get up here by carriage. The night guard standing at the main gate greeted her. They were waiting for her. The princess thanked him for his service and suggested that he stop talking empty talk. Let him tell her, can they see the divine child now? The guard answered, of course. Everything is unchanged. She thanked him again and invited Cyril to follow her. Cyril asked his dragons, will they wait for him here? Of course, the dragons agreed. Entering the temple, they walked along a long corridor, and Cyril asked her, "Is this the divine child in front of them?" In front of them lay a dragon skeleton. The princess confirmed his guess. As he can see, these are bones, and in this state for several centuries, they believe that one day he will be reborn. So the guards are protecting him. How is it? Did he understand anything? Cyril answered that first he would like to examine it. Approaching the skeleton, he glanced at it and thought that it did not become clearer to him. Suddenly the skeleton turned to him. A human child? Cyril almost went crazy with surprise. The skeleton continued that for the first time in decades, people had come here. It had been a long time ago. He noisily inhaled and noticed that the girl smelled of royal blood, and he was an ordinary person. Sealer asked in shock, was he even talking? The divine child asked him in return, was the person talking to him? Cyril answered that everything was so, everything was correct. The skeleton chuckled, so the person understood him? That was news to him. Cyril irritably noted that he should have said such words. Just think, a corpse, and he was talking. The skeleton laughed even harder and said that he thought like an ordinary person. He again addressed Sealer as a human child, asking why he came here. Cyril answered that he came to look at his condition and maybe help him be reborn. The skeleton chuckled. People still have such a legend, or something else, but it seems that people were taught how to revive them. Cyril asked in amazement, "What is he talking about?" Then he turned to the princess. She asked him, did he learn something? In response, he asked her a counter-question. Does she know a way to revive a divine child? The princess was confused by such a question, but she did not know what Sealer asked her. The skeleton laughed and noted that people's memory is short, and written sources and their safety depend on the will of those in power. Then he called the human child to himself. When Cyril approached him, he said that he just needs to be set on fire. Cyril asked again with doubt, "Set on fire?" The skeleton answered that he is reborn from fire countless times. Cyril did not dare to do this, because surely the dragon bones are a state treasure, and setting it on fire will be a problem. Although he knew that dragons do not lie, and decided, come what may, he will set it on fire. He turned to the princess and said that now he will revive the divine child. Perhaps she will be a little discouraged by the method, but she does not mind. She said that she understood him and added that she entrusts him with everything necessary for this. He thanked her and got down to business. When Cyril set fire to the skeleton, it burst into a very bright flame. The princess was amazed. What did he do? How could he do this? Suddenly, the flame swelled even more, and from it appeared a dragon phoenix. When Cyril set it on fire, he also did not expect such a spectacular appearance. The dragon rumbled that he would thank the human child. He was reborn. He was recovering. When the dragon appeared in all its glory, Cyril noticed that it was smaller than he thought. Is this the child of God? It was pitiful to look at the princess. It seemed like she was about to lose consciousness. She sat on the floor and asked in bewilderment what had happened. Cyril called out to her and asked what was wrong with her. The dragon phoenix apologized. The princess had such a reaction because of him, he forgot to hold back his powers after 100 years. The girl began to come to her senses and could not believe her eyes. She muttered that now, a little more, and she would come to her senses. Cyril chuckled. He could not hold back his powers. Of course, he is a rather mischievous fellow. The dragon put his paw on his head and noted that he was the first of the people who dared to call him mischievous. The princess still could not believe it. He had already gotten along with Cyril. The dragon asked him, "Is his name Cyril?" Cyril confirmed that it was and asked what his name was. The phoenix was surprised. His name? He has no name. He is the only son of a god in the world. That's what they call him. He does not need a name to be different. Cyril objected. It is inconvenient when there is no name. He asked the dragon if he could give him a name. He was surprised. A name for him? When Cyril confirmed that he understood him correctly, the dragon laughed so loudly that a strange noise was heard, to which Cyril responded. He asked what sound he heard. Phoenix apologized to him. It was because of his loud voice that the landslide occurred. Both the princess and Cyril were surprised by his words. The girl was shaking all over and called out to Cyril. He understood her and calmed her down, telling her that everything was fine. Nothing terrible had happened. She was surprised. Wow, nothing had happened. At that moment, Cyril's dragons wanted to come to his aid. They called out. Louise noticed that the mountain began to crumble, which meant that their master was in danger. The guards tried to detain them, saying that it was dangerous to be here. They should move to a safe distance. At that moment, the temple gate swung open, and Cyril, princess, and dragon came out. Everyone was amazed to see the phoenix. The princess calmed her guards. She told them that she was fine. Cyril also said that he was fine. Let everyone meet the new dragon. This is a child of God. Phoenix was indignant. What was he saying? Did he forget that he wanted to give him a name? Cyril apologized to him and explained that he thought that the child of God would be completely different. He asked him what gender he was. The dragon grinned and answered that they have no gender because, unlike others, they do not need to reproduce. Cyril decided to give him the name Chris. The dragon happily said that he liked his name. His name is now Chris. This was great news. Cyril asked him to be quieter. He was afraid that his loud scream would cause a landslide again. The princess thought that she had already gone crazy. She asked Cyril what they were talking about. He answered her that he gave the dragon a name. The girl asked again, "Did he give him a name?" Cyril answered positively, or was it impolite of him? Chris laughed and advised him not to pay attention. He recognized him, so he was not complaining about anything. Cyril noticed, so everything was fine. There was no reason to worry. Chris asked him if he was still free. If so, then let him seal the contract with him. Cyril asked again, "A contract?" What was he talking about now? The dragon was surprised. He didn't know. He was a dragon knight, right? Cyril answered that he was. Chris was amazed. The princess didn't know either. Cyril turned to her. Did she know what a contract between a man and a dragon meant? The girl replied that she was hearing about it for the first time. He turned to his dragons. Do they know? They replied that they also had no idea what it was. Chris was indignant. He didn't expect this. In just a few centuries, the concept of such a contract had disappeared. Cyril asked if perhaps he would already tell about this contract. The dragon noted that it is better to show once than to tell, and asked Cyril for some of his blood. He cut his finger, blood came out of the wound, and a magic circle formed in the air. Chris noted that the circle appeared in the air. This is his magic. Then he lowered it to the ground, created a pentagram, added some manipulations, and said that now he and Cyril are connected. If a person binds himself to a dragon with a contract, then he can use part of its power. Cyril was amazed. Does he have part of the dragon's power? Chris noted that in his case, it is mastery of fire. He suggested Cyril to set himself on fire. Cyril did what the phoenix asked him to do. The princess exclaimed with alarm, "What is he doing?" Cyril reassured her that everything is fine with him, and was surprised to realize that he is not even hot among the fire. This is what it meant to control fire. Chris happily said that this is only his power. It is unique. Cyril thanked him wholeheartedly for this gift. The dragon was kind in return, his thanks for giving him a name. The princess, who watched Cyril easily cope with the task and find a common language with the dragon, made a decision. She turned to Cyril with a request. She would like to invest in his guild. Cyril was surprised. Was she serious? He could not even dream of such a thing, that a member of the royal family would want to invest in his guild. She begged him to accept her offer. He objected that it was he who should ask, not her. The princess was happy, said that their decision was mutual, and she accepted his offer. He spoke, turning to Chris. A lot had happened in the temple, but as far as he understood, he could bind the contract with 3 more, right? The dragon replied that it was so, and continued that he could ask him about anything. He would answer everything. After all, he was Chris. After a while, everyone returned home. Colette irritably noted that Chris loved to show off so much. Louise agreed with her. Emma laughed maliciously. Cyril thought that at first his dragons could not get used to the new hero, but now they got along very well. In principle, Chris was not bad. At this point, the dragon told him that he could contact any dragon, but the number depended on the free spaces in it. Cyril asked what he meant. Chris continued, "Simply put, he can write a certain number of words on paper, and it works here too." Sylar said that he understood and did not understand. Does this mean that there is a chance that you can contact only one more dragon? Is it possible to increase this space? Chris noted that he should not worry about it. Of course, he is growing. Cyril asked him, and he is not. Chris laughed. A priori, he is immortal. He is an ideal creature. Colette grumbled discontentedly that he should grow up with his behavior. He asked her what she said about him. Maybe she needs to grow up? She snapped back, saying, why was he even bothering her? He continued to tease her, saying, he sees everything, she won't hide anything from him. After all, they say that she is a tsundere? He didn't have time to finish because at that moment Colette bit him on the side. He was indignant. What was she doing? Colette replied that he asked for it himself. Cyril, watching their squabble, noticed that they were so friendly. He turned to Louise and Emma and asked them to be the same. Louise grumbled that it was too difficult. Emma supported her, that she expressed herself reasonably. Cyril asked Chris if it was possible to find out how much space was in him. The dragon replied that it was no problem and asked to prepare 1 glass of water. When Cyril poured water into the glass, Chris told him to take the vessel in his hands, then close his eyes and imagine that he is now alone in an empty room. In this room, he filled everything with water, and the room becomes larger and larger. Cyril did everything exactly as the dragon said. At some point, he felt the glass tremble in his hands. He opened his eyes and did not understand what happened. A lot of water flowed out of a small glass. Cyril and everyone were shocked by what happened, and only Chris laughed heartily. He said that he was not mistaken about him. He has the best vessel of all those he had ever seen. Water continued to flow out of the glass. Cyril was surprised. Where did so much of it come from? What was the reason? Then he guessed it was his space. Chris confirmed this and added that now he can make a contract with so many girls can fit in the Emperor's Square. Cyril noted that the example was so-so. But as for the fact that he had a lot of space, that was good. Louise noted that it was very cool. Emma confirmed it. Now Cyril knew for sure that he could make a pact with dragons. He turned his attention to Colette and asked her if something had happened. She looked very depressed. She replied that she was fine. The omnipresent Chris said that this was a real woman's heart. She got angry. Let him not blabber too much. Chris turned to Cyril. Does he understand? Not strange, but unnecessary. Colette pounced on him and bit him. He apologized to her, laughed, and replied that it hurt. Protagonist asked him if he could heal wounds with fire. Chris replied that he could, but he couldn't say what it felt like until he felt it himself. At that moment, Louise appeared and grumbled that she was all wet. The whole floor was in water. Cyril asked her if they would start with her. She agreed. Chris said that then they should shed blood. Louise readily extended her paw, as did Cyril, but suddenly she froze in place. Cyril asked her what was wrong. She replied that it was nothing. She had a strange feeling, as if someone was scratching her throat. He asked her if it hurt. Louise replied that it didn't. She looked at him with an incomprehensible look. Cyril wanted to know something else. She replied that she thought he was cooler than usual. He was like a god. He was surprised. Seriously? At that moment, Chris announced that the contract was concluded. Cyril noted that she had begun to gain new knowledge. Chris replied that this was the contract, so that's what her abilities were. Cyril asked, "What kind?" The dragon replied, "Doesn't he know himself? It depends on the contract. There are general skills, and there are individual ones." Cyril noted, "So Louise has individual skills. Now they will find out." He sat down on the ground and froze for a while, plunging into Louise's space. Colette disturbed him. She asked him if he had just fallen asleep for a second. He laughed. Cyril noted that it was so similar to Louise. He laughed even more and said that it was not only her. Cyril showed his finger to Chris. He noticed with surprise that the cut had healed. Right? Cyril replied that it was most likely recovery through sleep. Recovery occurs faster than usual during sleep. Chris laughed and expressed his admiration for his magic. Cyril turned to Louise, said that it was great, and thanked her. She replied that she was glad to help him. Then he turned to Emma with a similar request. He repeated the manipulations with her, and in the end, she laughed. Cyril asked her what she was doing. Emma replied that nothing and asked if he was finished. Cyril saw that her abilities were related to combat. Chris suggested that he try it on him. Cyril doubted whether it was possible. He replied that it wouldn't bother him at all. Then, Cyril said that he wouldn't hold back. A huge fireball flew out of his hands. The dragons were amazed. Colette couldn't believe her eyes. A fireball? Cyril said with delight that it was very convenient. Emma asked him if he would find it useful. He replied that he would definitely. Cyril asked Chris how he was doing. He replied that he was doing great and suggested trying again. A fireball with 9 fingers. That was the name of his new skill. Cyril asked why exactly 9 fingers. Colette's whole appearance showed that she didn't trust the scoundrel Chris. He was showing off too much. He noticed what kind of expressions she had on her face. Fire is his element. Cyril tried to use the skill, but it didn't work. A ring was shining on his finger. Emma asked him if something was wrong. Chris noticed the shine and said that it was the thumb of his right hand. The human right thumb signifies power. Hasn't he seen that all rulers wear a ring on the first finger? Cyril replied that he had never met such a person. Chris continued that it was a sign of a concluded contract. Now it was Colette's turn. She offered the master to begin. She was ready. From their spilled blood, a pentagram with a magic circle formed on the ground. She asked him, "Well, how was it?" Cyril replied that they had succeeded, but as he thought, they couldn't try it now. What he ate would become energy and be deposited in another place of his body. As far as he understood, you can save as much as you like and use it too. Chris summed it up. That is, no matter how much he ate, he wouldn't get fat. Cyril replied that it was true. Cyril told Colette that her skill would be especially useful on hikes and thanked her. She was embarrassed and noted that she hadn't done anything like that. Chris exclaimed that he was very lucky. Cyril asked what exactly. He answered that it was about the contract. If he made even a little mistake, he would be fat like Colette. The dragon got angry, screamed that she was not fat, and attacked Chris, biting him. He fought her off, screaming that it hurt. Cyril, chuckling, said that Chris asked for it himself. The next day, a visitor came to Cyril. He introduced himself as Sebastian Bernard. Cyril told him his name. Sebastian bowed primly and said that he was very pleased to meet him. Sylar thought that he, of course, took on various tasks, but he was definitely not used to such an attitude. The visitor took a letter from his breast pocket and put it on the table in front of Cyril. He said, in a businesslike tone, that this was an invitation from Mrs. Katerina. Cyril opened the letter and thought, is it from her again? Sebastian noted that he should thank her. Cyril read the letter, said that he was right, that was true, and what business did he have with him? The man became embarrassed and said that it was hard for him to ask for this, but could he get some dacite? Cyril repeated his order. Sebastian said in a businesslike manner that it was true. The size was 1 cocotte. He needed 100 pieces. Was it possible? While Kyler was thinking about his question, Chris appeared at that moment and said that it would be interesting. Let him take this order. Cyril scolded him for his behavior. Sebastian even started sweating when he saw the dragon and crawled under the table out of fear. Chris laughed. Why did he hide so suddenly? Sebastian looked out from his hiding place, apologized, and asked Cyril if this was his dragon. Cyril apologized to him for the surprise and scolded Chris. What was wrong with him? The dragon was indignant. But what did he do? He knows where the dacite is and can show it to you. It was Cyril's turn to be surprised. He asked him, is that so? He turned to Sebastian and replied that they would take on the task. The man smiled and thanked his savior. He remarked that it was very brave of him to take on this task. After some time, they went to fulfill the order. Colette asked in pain, and why was Chris with them? The dragon laughed and exclaimed, and she wanted to go alone? She was irritated by his stupid jokes. She called him a fool. Cyril asked him, what kind of dacite is this? The dragon explained that it is a type of jewelry, but people do not like it because they get into trouble when they try to get it. Cyril suggested that this is why it has such a high price. Chris answered, that's right. Dowit wheat appears when the moonlight falls on it completely. It begins to sparkle brightly, which is why some call it the core of the night dragon. Cyril thought it must be beautiful. He asked him again, why dragons were treated differently? He answered that they simply overestimated them. Cyril impatiently asked, well, where is the dacite? He didn't tell him anything. Chris grinned and pointed to a certain place. Cyril was surprised to see that they were standing on a volcano. He asked the dragon, what kind of place is this? The dragon answered that it is a volcano. Cyril understood this without him. But where is the dacite? Chris led him to the mouth of the volcano and said, As far as he remembers, it is called Tonevin. Cyril was indignant. He didn't ask him about that. Chris told him to look inside the volcano. The dacite was there. Does he see transparent things? That's it? Cyril intended to go down. Colette protested. What was he up to? Chris grinned and said that an ordinary person cannot get it, but he can. Cyril, descending, thought that any other person would have a hard time here. Now he understood why the task was given to him. He asked Chris, "Can he go into the lava too?" The dragon exclaimed, "What is he asking about? The power of the contract works here. He can climb naked. It will be like hot springs for him." Cyril said that he will refrain from this. At this moment, Colette called out to him and asked him, "Is he sure he doesn't mind? It can be very dangerous." He answered her that everything is fine, and Chris could hardly deceive him. Finally, Cyril went down and stepped into the hot lava. He noticed that he really wasn't hot. Chris shouted from above that he was a good man. He was happy for him. His friend, Cyril, asked, "Didn't he say that it would be easy?" The dragon answered positively, but still, it was brave of him. Cyril knelt down and pulled one dacite out of the lava, noting that he pulled it out as if from mud. His hands did not even burn. Therefore, collecting 100 pieces was not a problem for him. Colette hurried him to return quickly. They were hot. After some time, Cyril collected the required amount of dacite and said that here are 20,000 lire in his hands. He had changed a lot in recent days. Chris replied that such is the human world. If there is power and glory, then work is valued differently. That is how life is arranged. Cyril sincerely thanked him for these words. The fame of Cyril and his guild grew more and more. By this time, Cyril renamed his guild to Dragon Faust. One day, a young man came to the tavern who called himself Six. He heard the conversations of the visitors. Naturally, they were talking about Cyril and his organization. One of the people present asked him if he had heard of the guild. He replied that he had heard of it and thought that he was already tired of the rumors that their business was going uphill. He looked at the visitors and felt that they were hiding something from prying eyes, and so it was. One of them asked if he knew what people were saying. They were saying that the queen herself had become its patron. The guy asked again if that was really true. Visitors said, "What upstarts?" They were very lucky. Six thought that he could not even guess about it. The young man walked decisively to this guild. When he came to Cyril, he greeted him and said that he would call himself Six. Cyril thought that since he said so, it meant that his name was not real. He asked what business he had with him. The young man addressed him by name and said that there was work for him. He needed to deliver something. Cyril asked again, "Something?" Six answered that his reward would be 30,000 lire. Cyril was impressed by this amount. He thought that usually transportation is the easiest job, but for such a crazy amount of money, it is definitely something difficult. He asked what he will be transporting. Six could not tell him this. He wanted Cyril to take this thing and bring it to a certain place. Cyril thought that he was hiding the contents, which threatened danger, but this was even more curious. At this moment, as always, out of nowhere, Chris appeared with his loud laughter and proclaimed that he was here, in person. Cyril was indignant. Was he up to his old tricks again? He replied that they were having interesting conversations here. Let him take him into the conversation too. Cyril said that he was right about this. The task was really exciting. He decided that he would ask everything himself. No one could resist him. Tyler asked skeptically, "Really?" Chris was indignant. He still doubted. Now he would show himself in action. He increased his pressure on the aura around the visitor and told him to quickly tell him what he was hiding there. Six was in complete amazement, and suddenly the chair broke under him. He sat down on the floor. Tyler asked Chris what he had done. The dragon replied that he had put a little pressure on the young man, and now he would tell them everything. Cyril helped the guy up and asked him again what kind of cargo. Six hesitated, but then said that it was dragon tier incense. Chris quietly repeated the essence of the cargo and added that he was overcome by a little nostalgia. To the silent question of Cyril, he explained that this incense is one of the varieties of perfume. There's a sleep effect. If you bring it to the fire, you can see hallucinations. Cyril said to get into a dream then. The dragon continued that this incense does not cause physical harm. However, these perfumes were banned by the king of people. Kalir was surprised. Is that so? So this is a secret task? Six answered in a muffled voice that it was. Cyril asked the dragon why the perfumes were banned. They do not cause physical harm. Chris said that he was right, but the demographic level began to decline. This is the result of immersion in another reality. Cyril was surprised by his answer. He noted that nothing could be done then. Chris continued that perhaps the authorities went too far with this ban. There are many people who need it. Cyril asked in surprise. And who could it be? The dragon said that he had an example. It was an old man who lost his wife. He needed it. Tyler understood what Chris wanted to say. He said that he also thought that everything should not have been so strictly limited because all people are different. Chris liked his answer. He expressed it with his mind-blowing laugh. Cyril told Six that he would take on this task. The guy breathed a sigh of relief and replied that he understood everything. He explained that first Cyril needed to go to the designated place. He handed him a map and added that this place was indicated on this map. There would be an item there that he would need to transport. Cyril and his dragon set off. After some time, Kyler checked the map and noticed that they were there. A large fort, Nirko, towered in front of them. Louise asked if this was the place. Cyril replied that this is so. They will take the perfume here. He saw a lot of people on the ramparts. They came closer to the fort. The guy in the bandana asked him who he was. Cyril handed him a letter. The guy immediately changed his attitude and said that the Dragon Faust could pass. When they entered the fort, the people present exclaimed, "Who is this?" They turned to Cyril and asked him if he was the guildmaster. A brutal-looking man with an eye patch on his left eye separated from the crowd and came closer to the newcomers. He apologized to Cyril and said that this would be the first task. Let him show them his strength. Cyril asked if it was even a request from them. Brutal replied that there were many cases when rumors turned out to be untrue. Sylar got off Louise. She called out to him worriedly. He, ignoring her warning call, stretched out his hands forward, activated the contract Emma, and used the skill fire bullet from his fingers at breakneck speed and in huge quantities. Fiery projectiles appeared which, without touching people, fell to the ground and blazed with a bright fire. Brutal was impressed. He said that Sheeler is good. Cyril exhaled and asked, "Is he satisfied now?" The man replied that he was quite satisfied. He saw everything with his own eyes. After that, he invited Cyril to follow him. Chris giggled and noted that as he thought his friend had spent all his savings, that the tired protagonist conspiratorially asked him if he understood his condition. He was currently using 30% of his energy. With the help of the contract with Colette, he could accumulate energy. But it seemed that this was not enough. Louise anxiously asked her master if he was okay. He replied that he was fine. What had happened now would be useful to him in the future. Chris noted that he had made an excellent conclusion. Noticing that everyone was staring at them, he noticed that there had been a lot of annoying glances lately. Colette agreed with him. She grumbled that he was right. Although they had called them themselves, Chris growled in displeasure, which frightened the inhabitants of the fort. His growl combined with his enormous size caused them to be in awe. Cyril pulled him up, asking what he was doing. The dragon laughed and replied that he was just joking. He stroked Cyril's head with his rather large paw, ruffled his hair, and to Sylar's words of gratitude, remarked that he should relax. They were comrades after all. The Brutal, watching what was happening, said in amazement that he had never heard of such a beast. The dragon aside let him tell him where the cargo is, or is it not there yet? The man muttered that he would do everything now. He invited them to follow him. Suddenly the Brutal stopped and turned around, looking at them. Emma asked why they had stopped. Chris answered that the man realized that he could not control them, and that it was better not to quarrel with them. Emma smiled and remarked she understood. The Brutal was afraid of their master. The dragon laughed and answered that she had understood everything correctly. The Brutal's subordinate brought him a box. The man put it in front of Cyril and said that he should take it to a man named Gigu in Mano, who would pay him for his work. But he warned that there was an outer wall in Mano. The contents would be checked there. He would have to deal with it himself. The friends set out. The dragons were worried. What would they do now? Emma said that if this perfume is discovered, they are finished. Colette asked, "What is a check?" Emma explained that this is usually done in large cities. This is a procedure that takes place at the border. Cyril praised her for her knowledge. She replied that she had experience when she was in Rinturm. Cyril noted that it was necessary to prevent them from being discovered. He did not want problems. Now they hid it in Colette's stomach. But seeing her in such a state, the guards would easily understand everything. Besides, they probably already know about them. Colette asked what they should do then. Cyril thought about it and looked at the river that flowed next to them. An idea came to him. He shared with his friends that the river would help them out. He turned to Colette. He had a request for her. Could she help? The dragon nodded in agreement. She was always ready to help her master. Finally, they approached the city. They were stopped for inspection. Cyril told Colette that he relied on her. The guard asked him if he was a dragon knight. Cillier confirmed that he was, told the guard his name, the name of his guild, and handed him the documents. The guard checked. Everything was accurate, and the dragons were with him, as described in the documents. He pointed to Colette, noted that it was a type of mushufushu, and asked what was in her stomach. Colette stood in front of him with a swollen belly. It was obvious how hard it was for her. Cillier replied that there was nothing special. The guard irritably noted that it was up to them to decide. Cyril asked him, should he show everything? The guard answered, of course, that's all, he's still asking. Cyril stroked Colette. She grinned and began to release a large amount of water. The guard was indignant. What was it? Cyril answered that it was ordinary water, a very necessary thing on a journey. When Colette released all the water, Cillier asked the guard if they could go free. The man replied that it was. Let them go in faster. That's how the friends got into the city with prohibited cargo. Emma was delighted. They bypassed the inspection so easily. Cyril agreed with her and added that it was not always possible to use it. They released all the water, but there was still something left in Colette's stomach. It was the incense dragon tears. He summed it up, so now they needed to find Giga. They went looking. He looked around the city and noticed that it was noisier here than in Bursel. It was the city of Manu. Emma said that they say that this city was built by the guildmaster himself. Cyril was surprised. Is that so? I wonder how he created it. He would also like to build a city for dragons. They walked slowly along the streets, looking around. Suddenly, Louise drew his attention to the sign of one building. The sign had the same small sign as on the perfume. Cyril decided to try to enter this building. They were met by a young man who asked them who they were. Cyril said his name and asked if this young man was Gigu. The guy said, well, it was them. He was waiting for them. He asked Cillier about the goods. Cyril asked Colette to get it. When she freed herself from the box, Cyril asked the guy, will he check? Gigu answered that everything is correct. He cannot help but check. The cargo is too valuable. Having opened the box, he looked through everything, which hurt Cillier's pride. Finally, he said that everything is fine. He received the goods in full. The guy took out the same box and said that this was their promised reward. Cyril asked Colette to hide it. She got down to business. Gigu was surprised. He wouldn't count? Cillier answered with superiority that he wouldn't. If it wasn't enough, he simply wouldn't take on the next job. Gigu understood the hidden meaning of his answer and grinned. When the friends went outside, Louise was amazed. Wow, 30,000 lyre, so easy. Cyril reasoned that if such a price was given only for transportation, those who work directly with them make even more money. It was worth studying this issue a little. Chris giggled and exclaimed, was he seriously interested in this? After wandering around the city, they found a place to spend the night. Louise was surprised that there was room for dragons here. Cyril replied that it was not surprising because the city was so big. Emma spoke doubtfully about the incense. She did not think that so many merchants wanted to get it. She was simply amazed. Cyril answered that everything was so. If you just bring it into the city, then you can do whatever you want. She did not calm down. How so? It is a forbidden product. Colette also asked, is it okay for him that he made money on it like that? Cillier was not offended. He said that it is forbidden. It is convenient only for the authorities, and if there are people who need it, then he would like the goods to be delivered. Colette answered that if he is okay, then she will not worry. To tell the truth, she did not care about people. Cillier noted with disappointment, and yet, how to make such perfume? They did not tell him. Colette answered that it is not easy. At that moment, Chris showed himself again. He chuckled and noted that his friend should not worry about it. Cyril was surprised. Does he know how to do it? The dragon confirmed that it was so. Cyril admired him. He knew everything. Of course, he guessed that the dragon could know, but not for sure. Louise did not participate in their conversation. She was already fast asleep. Chris said that first, he needed to know that the incense, Dragon Tears, is a camouflage name. Cillier was surprised. That is, it has nothing to do with the dragon tear. The dragon replied that it was so. However, it is definitely related to the dragon, and the materials are not that special. They need the Garian fruit. Cyril asked again, Garian? Chris noted that it can be found in a regular fruit and vegetable store. It will be easily sold. Cyril replied that he understood everything and decided to go and have a look. He came to the market, approached the fruit seller, and asked about the fruit he was interested in. The seller gave him the fruit. Cyril was surprised by its interesting shape. The fruit looked like a bull's head with horns. She explained to him that this fruit is also called a cow horn, and only what's inside it can be eaten. Cyril thanked her for the information and asked her to give him everything she had. The girl grinned for the first time, and already so much. He paid for the purchase, thanked her again, and went home. When he came in, he showed the bag to Chris and said that he bought what he needed. The dragon looked into the bag and confirmed that this was it. Then, he said that Louise was sleeping, so he called Colette and Emma to him and asked them to eat the fruit. The dragons were surprised. What was this anyway? Selir was amazed, but isn't only what's inside edible? Chris replied that only people eat like that. He turned to the dragons again. As soon as they swallowed it, let them keep it in their stomach. For Colette, in the first stomach. Cyril asked him, what about him? Chris noted that he didn't need food and that he didn't even have a digestive system in his body. Colette said ironically that he was useless. The dragon asked her not to be sarcastic. Selir asked what happened next after the dragon swallowed the fruit. He replied that they would have to wait a month. Emma was amazed. A month? Cyril asked. Is that how the incense would be made? The dragon pointed to the thorns of the fruit and added that the secretions that form in the stomach coat it so that the thorns don't pierce it. Cyril assumed that it was something like pearls. Chris replied that the fruit ripens inside the stomach and that what comes out is that very incense. Cyril was surprised, but still doubted. Is it all that easy to do? The Chris laughed his unique laugh again and said, let his friend not misunderstand him. Selir asked what he had said wrong. Why? The dragon continued that it might be easy for him, but other dragons couldn't talk. How could he expect them to ask their dragons to keep Garion in their stomachs for a month? Cyril realized his mistake. Chris noted that it was difficult for others besides him. Selir understood everything and apologized to Colette and Emma. Emma was surprised. What was he apologizing for? He replied that it must be hard to keep in your stomach all the time. Colette reassured him that wasn't true at all. In fact, it was easy. Who did he take her for? They could handle such nonsense in no time. Selir was pleased that everything had turned out to be easier than he had expected because he didn't want his girls to suffer. He thanked them and added that, in his opinion, many people knew the method of making it. Selir asked Chris, what did he think? Would it be very strange if he were to constantly buy Garion? The dragon replied that anything was possible. Cyril noted that it would be good to be able to make this fruit himself. Chris laughed loudly and answered his friend a silent question by saying that it seems he is not only a knight, he also has the ability to trade. Cyril was amazed. Trade? The dragon, chuckling, answered that in fact, everything is simple. He understands that for each stage, from collecting materials to sales, different people do everything, Selir guessed. He meant that in his case, only he will do everything. Chris noted that this was the correct conclusion, and it is not very profitable to buy something from other companies because they raise prices and then a person becomes dependent on them. Selir admitted that he was right. It is very problematic if the bar does not have alcohol. Cyril thought about it. Of course, he could grow this fruit himself. When Emma interrupted him and finished that, it would not be very good if others saw it, right? He replied that everything was so, if done, then only quietly. Colette noted that even so, but they needed territory. How would they hide it? Cyril looked at her and asked if she could. The dragon replied that she personally could not, but she had a friend who could. The next day, they came to the dragon market in Manneau. Cyril tells the shopkeeper that he is looking for a type of gargoyle. Does he have any? The seller answered positively and asked him to follow him. He invited him to the barn, where Cyril saw the dragon that interested him. The dragon was lying on the ground, with a chain on its paws and very sad eyes. Selir leaned towards her, greeted her, and introduced himself to her as Selir. Then Cyril said that she might be surprised, but he understands their language. He wants to talk to her. The dragon said, I see. Then they looked at each other in silence. Cyril raised his hand and asked, is she not very talkative? The dragon replied that she does not like to talk. Then Cyril thought that she was rather silent. Then he said that the main thing is that she understands him. Cyril smiled and said that he wants to take her away and asked what she thinks about it. She raised her head and said as he wants. After some time they were walking down the street. Then Cyril turned to the dragon and said that it was time to give her a name. He asked if there were any wishes. She walked and did not pay attention to him. Then Cyril slowed down a little and asked if she could hear him. Yui stopped, turned her head, and said that she thought he was not talking to her right now. Then she replied that she was listening. Cyril was surprised and said, right, they are usually not given names. She closed her eyes and said that she didn't care what name she would have. Cyril put his hand to his chin, looked away thoughtfully and said, "I see," then suggested a name, Yui. He asked her what it was. Yui agreed. Gradually, Cyril began to accept her, although he received short but not negative answers. They continued on their way, and Cyril said that it was nice to meet you. Yui agreed again. Then he turned to her and asked that he had heard that her kind had interesting skills. Would she tell him about them? Yui stopped, sat down, lowered her head, and said that it was difficult to explain. Cyril smiled and said that she could explain it as best she could. Yui began to say that there were two kinds. Cyril asked which one was the first. Yui answered that she touched someone, and they disappeared along with her. Cyril was surprised and said, "Invisibility is great." Yui added that if she makes a voice, she can be heard, but unless she is touched, she cannot be seen. Cyril said that this is good. Everything is clear and distinct, then asked, "What else?" Yui turned to him and said that she changes the visibility of the surroundings. Cyril was surprised and asked what visibility meant. He thought for a moment, put his hand on his chin and began to think. Then he apologized and said that he did not quite understand. He asked if Yui could show him with an example. Yui said that she did not mind. Then Cyril, folding his arms over his chest, said, "Great." They went to the exit and Cyril said that his friends were there and he would show them Yui. He opened the door and there stood Louise, who was waiting for him, and said, "Welcome back." Then she asked in surprise because he was supposed to bring a new guy. Cyril was very scared by what he heard, then looked at Yui and said that she was already here. Colette was very surprised. Emma said exactly and apologized for not noticing her. He looked askance at Yui and asked if it was because of her size. Chris chuckled and replied that it was not at all. Those three only saw him. Cyril remained silent and was extremely surprised. Then he said, "Okay," and introduced the new dragon to everyone and said that her name was Yui. All the dragons bowed and said that it was nice to meet them. Then Cyril turned to Yui and asked if she would show him her abilities. Yui looked at him and said that she had already shown him. Cyril looked surprised and asked, "What?" Chris replied that he had said that those three only saw him. Then Cyril asked if that was her other ability. Yui confirmed it. She added that she could change perception. It was visible, but in a different way. Cyril said in surprise, "Perception? If there was a corpse lying on the road, she could make it so that it was not visible." Yod replied, "Yes." Cyril was very surprised and said, "Wow," and added that with this ability, they could hide the entire field. Chris said that it would be very interesting if he made a pact with her. Cyril thought about it, then turned to Yui and asked if he could ask her. Yui interrupted him and said, "You can." Cyril looked at him in surprise and asked that she didn't need an explanation. She didn't know anything, did she? Yui replied that she didn't hate him and that she found the guys interesting too. Cyril thanked her. They released a few drops of blood on the ground and made a pact. Louise approached Cyril and, surprised, asked what his ability was. Proudly replied that it was a power that changed perception and that he couldn't wait to try it. Chris said that he would use it. Then he asked if Cyril wanted to change his look. Cyril looked at him in surprise and asked why. He closed his eyes, said he would go for a test, used his ability, and turned into a huge dragon Bahamut. Everyone looked at him in surprise and asked, "Is this a Bahamut species?" Cyril asked why. Chris laughed and replied that it was an ability that subjugated the vision of others. He is the king of dragons. It suits him very well. Cyril remained silent and asked, "Is it true?" A few days later, he was in Burzel's office. There he was standing and talking to Rosa. He told her that he wanted to open another base. She said in surprise, "Wow," and asked, "Has his guild expanded that much?" He answered that it hasn't expanded much. He has Chris. There are 5 of them now. Inside the city, everything seems cramped, she replied. Exactly, that's true on one hand, but in reality, this is for Garion. Rosa replied that it would not be cheap and asked if he could handle it. She added that it certainly depends on the area. Cyril said in surprise that he would like more. She said the size of a military fort then? She put her finger to her cheek and said then 50,000 lyre per year. Cyril was very surprised and asked, "So expensive?" She replied that the lands belonged to the king. He noted that he couldn't afford it. She said that he knew the princess well, maybe he should ask her. He became sad and answered, no, the princess would agree, but he didn't want to drag her into it. He would think about finances first, and thanked her. After some time, he returned home and told the dragons that they would have no territory for a while. Colette said that they would have a household then. She answered, "Unfortunately, yes." Then he took a seed in his hand and said that he would try to grow this first. He turned to Yui and asked if he could hide it when it sprouted. Yui answered, "Yes." Chris asked if this amount was enough for him. He raised his hand and said, "Yes." They would do it for the sake of an experiment. Chris suggested planting it right here, not outside. Cyril was very surprised and said that there would be no light then. Chris laughed and said that there was no problem with that. He used his skill and created light. Cyril looked at him in surprise and couldn't say anything. He was delighted. Chris said that it was the phoenix flame, the flame of life, which makes plants grow quickly. Cyril asked if it was true that it would glow all the time and the plants would grow quickly. He also asked if it was hard for Chris. He laughed and said, "Interesting, how interesting. For these 3,000 years, he was the only one who took care of him." He added that he shouldn't worry. For him, it was the same as getting up from a chair. Emma stood nearby and watched what was happening. She was delighted. Cyril was very happy and said that everything was going well. He added that he could now count on Chris. Huey also helps. Now it's definitely not visible. Soon someone came to visit him and asked for forgiveness. Cyril turned around in surprise and asked who it was. He went to the door, opened it, and was very surprised. It was the princess. She stood there with her eyes closed and was very happy. He told her that he could see that she was in a hurry. They went into the house and sat down at the table. He asked her if there was a new task. She answered. That's how he judged her. He was very surprised and did not know what to answer. She said that she had received a message from the city that he needed territory for the guild. He thought that most likely it was all from Rose. He felt embarrassed and said yes. He added that he did not want to bother her. She got angry and asked why. After all, there were plenty of territories she would give him as much as he needed. He felt embarrassed and said that this was too much. She shouted that she would do everything for him, brought her hand to her chest, and added that she wanted to be useful. He closed his eyes and said that if she insisted so much, then he agreed. He relied on her. The princess happily exclaimed yes and asked to trust her. After some time, Cyril and the princess were riding in a carriage, and Cyril said that only 3 days had passed and she had already found a place. Then he asked, "Isn't it troublesome?" The princess answered no, she just needed a person to take over the territory. However, it cannot be used right away. Cyril looked at her in surprise. The princess looked out the window and said that they were there. Cyril also looked out the window, seeing the territory. He said in surprise that it was spacious. They got out of the carriage and began to walk around the territory. The princess asked, "How is he?" In the archives, it was written that this was a former estate, which means there are plowed lands. Cyril answered, "Yes, but now it is in terrible condition and the building is falling apart." The princess lowered her head and sadly said that she wanted to prepare such a territory for him so that he could work with it right away. Cyril said that she helped him because there is water and a bridge here. There is everything, so as not to start all the construction from scratch. He looked at her and thanked her. The princess folded her hands in front of her and happily said that she was honored that he liked it. They stood and looked at the territory. The princess clenched her fists. She was very happy. Cyril thought, the estate territory, then something like a village, which is run by aristocrats. Everything collected belongs to the owners, and the workers receive money. Initially, such a place was organized for growing crops. Its purpose is to breed Garians, and this place is perfect. Then Cyril put his hands on his side and said, "Let's start with cleaning." He used his skill and added that he will burn everything unnecessary. The princess stood behind him and was very surprised. She said that this skill was amazing. Cyril glanced at her and said that he made a pact with the dragons. She was surprised to hear this. Cyril started changing everything and thought that it would become fertilizer. Then something rushed past the princess and she screamed. Cyril looked at her in surprise and asked what was going on. She happily replied that nothing had happened. He said that he didn't think so. She thanked him and said that it was nothing special. She just wanted to be with him. He interrupted her and asked, "What?" She said, "His guild." She wanted to be a part of it, but she wasn't allowed because she was a princess. Cyril looked at her and said, "So that's it." She was very sad about this. She really tries for them. I should do something for her. Then he remembered his skill and asked her not to move. She asked in surprise, "What?" He used Yui's technique, change of appearance. The princess immediately changed her appearance. She was very surprised. Cyril happily said that now she would be able to participate in his guild as another person. She happily shouted, "Hooray!" Then she raised her hand and said, "Secretly then." Cyril put his hand to his chin and answered, "Yes, it turns out that way." Then he added that now he can't call her princess. She asked him, could he come up with her name himself? He asked in surprise, "Him?" Then John. Then he asked, "Does she like it?" She happily answered yes, adding that it was wonderful, and thanked him. Then Cyril said that she should know something since she became a member of his guild. She asked, "What?" Some kind of secret? Cyril said that he actually understands the language of dragons. He can talk to them. She was very surprised by the news and asked, "What? Really?" He folded his arms to the side and said that he understood that it was amazing. She said that she had never heard of such a thing. Cyril put his hand to his chin and said, "Then he will try something." They returned to the city of Burzel. She rode Louise. Then they approached Cyril and she said that they were back. Cyril said, "Welcome back." She asked him in surprise, "What can be understood now?" He asked her to wait a little and called Louise aside. He wants her to sit on her once and walk around. And in the meantime, he will translate what John is thinking, so he will show that he really understands their language. He asked at Louise and asked, "Well, how is it?" He asked her to tell him. She remained silent and looked at him sadly. He asked in surprise, "What is it?" She lowered her head down and said that she did not know if it was okay to tell him this. Cyril was very surprised, asked, "What is wrong?" She said that from her, it would sound strange. Then Cyril approached Jean. She asked him, "Yes?" Cyril added that Louise said that she said things that she shouldn't tell him. Jean looked at Louise and asked, "About what?" Cyril said that when she was driving to Louise, she said something, right? Jean was very worried and she shouted, "No way!" Louise turned to Cyril, said that she didn't plan to. Cyril happily said that everything was fine. Louise didn't want to talk. Jean thanked her. Cyril added that she said that it would be better if she told him herself. Jean shouted that that wasn't right either. Cyril looked at her in surprise and asked, "Why?" She put her hand to her chin and, embarrassed, said that it would turn out that way, that it was a confession. Then she said that it would be better this way. It turns out that he really does understand them. She added that it's great. That's why they trust him so much. Cyril answered, "Yes, it saves." Jean said that she thought she was communicating with a child of a god, but it turned out to be his power. Then she said, "Oh." Cyril asked, "What is it?" She replied, "His power." Then she asked, "No one knew about this from the previous guilds?" Cyril raised his hand to his face and said that he told them about it. She asked, "And even then he was kicked out?" He replied, "Yes." She became sad and said that it was cruel, although they say that this is a cool guild. Now she knows. Cyril thanked her for her sympathy and added that now he is really grateful to them. He is better off now with those who trust him. Then he said that from now on, she becomes a member of their guild. He relies on her. She happily shouted, "Yes," they shook hands, and she added that he can trust her. A month later, Cyril stood with Colette. They were watching the house being built. She then said that the progress is obvious. Cyril agreed with her. All the dragons came to them. Emma said that they had such a large territory and they could run at full speed. Louise was lying on the ground and said that she needed to sleep. Roy said that when the season for collecting Garians began, they would need to hire workers and they needed to build a building for them. Chris called Colette and Emma and asked them to show something to Cyril. They agreed with him and went to the side. Cyril stood and looked at them in surprise. Then they brought a basket. They brought it to Cyril and Emma asked, "How does he like it?" Cyril looked at it happily and said, "So that's how it turned out then. This is the first copy. Incense, dragon tears, finally ready." Emma stood and held this basket and then said that they managed to make it. Colette said that it was amazing that the Garian could take such a shape. Emma added that it was also made in the stomach. Cyril said that it must have been hard for her to keep that in her stomach all the time, and he thanked her. He added that it certainly did not look attractive. Chris said that amateurs would not understand. He could guarantee the quality. The merchants of Mono would certainly appreciate it. He offered to show them. After some time, they arrived at Jigo's shop. He knocked on the door and Jigo came out. He asked who was there. Then he saw Cyril. Said it was him. Cyril apologized for the intrusion. Jigo folded his arms in front of his chest and asked what he needed today. Cyril replied that he wanted him to look at something. He asked Colette to get it. She answered, understood, and took out a basket of Garians. Jigo looked at it. Cyril said that he made it himself. Jigo was very surprised. Cyril added that there was not much yet, but if he took it, he would make more. Jigo said, "Really?" and asked to take a look. Forbidden product, incense, dragon tears thanks to Yui? Not everything went smoothly for them, but if something went wrong, then there is no point in doing more. Jigo took it in his hand, brought it to his nose and sniffed it, and then said that this is such a high quality that he only meets once. No complaints? Then he asked Cyril if he really made it himself. Cyril answered, yes. Then he added that he knows someone who understands this. He advised to hold it in his stomach for a while. Jigo folded his hands in front of his chest, said, "Dragons? Then he is lucky." Cyril laughed and replied that his dragon is capable. Colette asked him to be quiet. Jigo replied that he would not achieve anything with flattery. Then Cyril asked him, "How about him? Will he take it?" He asked him if he could guarantee the same quality in the future. Cyril looked at Colette, and she told him if he only asked. Cyril replied that there would be no problem. Jigo said that he would buy it at 1.5 times, no, at twice the price. Cyril was very shocked by this and asked, at twice the price? Jigo closed his eyes and said that the price was completely justified and corresponded to the quality. Then he pulled out a drawer from the cabinet and took a bill from there, and then he handed it to Cyril, told him to take it, and explained that it was a church bill and he could cash 10,000 lyre at any church. This was an advance payment. Cyril replied that he understood everything. Then he took this church bill and thanked him. After some time, Cyril was sitting at home at the table with a man, and he told him that it was nice to meet him. He was from the Laurent Trading Organization. His name is Rowan Laurent. He is glad to meet him. An ascending sleep. Cyril looked at him in surprise and asked, ascending? He replied, exactly, the dragon Faust. He is sure that even greater heights await him. He wanted to get to know him better. Cyril raised his hand to his chin and thanked him. Then he asked, he didn't just come to say hello, did he? He replied, yes, because today he brought some goods. Cyril asked what was in it. Rowan put a chest on the table and asked to take a look at it. Cyril looked at it in surprise. Rowan said that it was one of the sacred relics. Cyril said, a sacred relic then? Rowan replied that as far as he knows, these are usually the remains of sacred creatures. Well, and mostly they sell fakes. However, this one is real. Cyril put his hand to his chin, sat, looked at this box, and thought. Rowan added that it is not clear in the chest. First, he should look. Cyril opened this chest and saw a bone there. He asked in surprise, a bone? Rowan answered, yes, the bone of the Dragon King. He controlled all the dragons. He wants to note that over time it will become more and more expensive, so it is better to buy it now. Cyril answered that he understood him, but he will think about it. Rowan answered, no problem. Cyril sat and thought that he still doubts. Then Chris started laughing loudly on the street and said that he is interested in it. Cyril thought, Chris. Chris advised him to buy it. He guarantees that he will not regret it. Then Cyril lowered his head and said that he will take it. Then he took it and went outside to Chris. Then he said that he does not know what he promised him, but he hopes it will be worth the money. Chris answered, it will. Put the Dragon King costume. Cyril looked at him in surprise and asked, what? Chris asked him to look. He sent the dragon onto the chest, and a blade appeared. He said that it was hidden by mimicry. Phoenix Horn is the real name. Cyril asked in surprise, Phoenix? Chris answered, yes. There is a part of it there a couple of deaths ago. People call it a divine item. Cyril held it in his hand and asked in surprise, divine? Such items are called divine because they were once used by divine beings. Of course, you can't get such a thing so easily. Chris laughed and said that he had rarely heard him be so surprised. Cyril said that since he said so, does that mean it's real? Then he asked, what is it useful for? Chris thought about it, then said that it's something that makes people cry with happiness. He advised breaking it and putting it inside himself. Cyril asked in surprise, you mean eat it? He answered, right. Then Cyril asked, what will happen to it? Chris replied that he could survive after one death. Cyril held it in his hands and looked at it, then said that this power was not in vain. It was from the Phoenix. Chris replied that he meant the same thing. Then he added that he shouldn't worry, the taste was normal. Cyril replied that the problem was that there was only one of these things. Then he asked, it wouldn't work if he ate so many of them, would it? He replied, right. Cyril said, even if Chris didn't need it, the rest of the guys did. I'd like 4 pieces. Then Chris laughed really hard, and Cyril asked him to take it easy. Chris apologized to him and said that he was so interesting. He was mortal himself and prioritized dragons. He didn't think that such people existed. Cyril, because it seemed true, had seen a lot of different people. Chris added that this would be his gratitude. He would fulfill his wish. Cyril looked at him in surprise and asked, what was he talking about? Chris replied that he shouldn't experience anything special. Then he asked Cyril to give it to him. Cyril gave it to him. Chris used his power to transform it into another object and handed it back to Cyril and said that it could be said that it was an updated phoenix horn. He asked what it meant. Chris replied that he would see it now and suggested returning to them. They came home and Cyril asked him what he would do. Chris thought for a moment and then replied that the center was here. Stick it into the ground beautifully. Cyril turned it over with the sharp end facing the ground and asked, is that all? Then he stuck it into the ground and a huge beam appeared. It glowed brightly. Cyril covered himself with his hand from it. Then he stepped aside and looked at it and asked, huge cylinder? Chris replied, yes, and now his wish is granted. Cyril asked, what? He replied that as long as they do not stay in this territory, none of them will die. Cyril looked at him and asked, really? He replied, of course they will be in danger, Let them come here. Cyril said that he couldn't even believe it. But judging by the scale, this is possible, it's great, and he thanked him. Chris told him that he can rely on him. If something happens, you can just stay here. No one will die in this territory. New territory, and power to it. Will this serve as new wings for the Dragonfaust Guild? Carrying it high up, Cyril and Jean were walking along the path, and she told him that everything was ready. Cyril confirmed this. Then he said that for now, they only have a house and buildings for dragons. They have already moved from Burzel, and he decided to name their new place Passeron. Jean was very surprised. She looked at him and asked, "What?" Then she added that his house seemed much more modest than the buildings for dragons. Cyril confirmed and added that without dragons, there would be no guild, and he just miscalculated when building. She asked him, "So he made the buildings for the dragon big? That's great." He replied that when they save up money, he plans to expand the territory. Emma ran to him and called him. Then she said that they were waiting for a visit at the gate. Cyril approached the gate where a man was standing. Cyril asked him about the rose. They answered yes, and they wanted him to go with them. Cyril was confused and asked if something so important had happened. Here, he answered that he didn't know what exactly it was. Cyril said, "At least nothing serious." Jean came up to him and said that she would go with him. He looked at her and said, "Okay, so they won't recognize her." After some time, Cyril entered the door of the room where Rose was sitting at the table. She apologized to him for calling so suddenly. When she saw Jean, she thought about it. Cyril said that she was new to the guild. Her name was Jean. She said that she was pleased to meet you. Rose asked, "Did you pick up some lady?" Jean, confused, asked, "What?" Rose added that her manners were very good, and most likely she was the daughter of some merchant. She put her finger to her cheek and added thoughtfully that it felt like she saw her. Jean and Cyril were confused and didn't know what to answer. Then Cyril thought that she had good intuition. Then he sat down on a chair and asked to tell her what happened. Rose sadly said that now she would ask him to clean up after the others. Then she asked him if he didn't mind. She added that in fact, Lindworm failed in their task. Cyril said Lindworm in confusion. Then he asked what they did. She answered that there was a disaster at the dragon pasture. The workers managed to evacuate, but the dragons remained there. Jean and Cyril were too upset by this news. Rose said that she felt sorry for the dragons, and she gave Lindworm a task to help them out. But they failed. Cyril folded his hands in front of his chest and lowered his head, then said that now they turned to him. That's how. Rose said that in that case, and suddenly, he was interrupted by Eric and Lewis. They burst into the room and shouted, "It's here!" Cyril said their names in surprise. Eric is the commander of the 3rd squad. He said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Then he asked Rose to tell him what it meant that they were finished. Louis stood next to him, folding his arms in front of his chest, shouted that they could explain everything. Rose wanted to say something, but they interrupted her and asked to give the floor to them. Eric said that if he refused the task now, their reputation would fall. She asked him what he was proposing. He approached her and said that first they would formalize the papers, and then Cyril interrupted him, said that he was leaving right now. He asked to send him all the necessary information. Rose said that she would do so. Louis shouted furiously. How dare he? Cyril began to leave the room, looked at them, told them to write the papers if they wanted. Louis was furious and asked what kind of attitude was this. Cyril said that the lives of the dragons were at stake and he was heading there first. Louis grabbed his shoulder and yelled at him to stop because the conversation had just begun. Then his hand caught fire. He yelled and asked what was this. Eric asked him, when did he have time? Cyril looked at them and left. After a while, they returned to their home. He gathered all the dragons and said that Emma and Yui would go with him first. Something could go wrong, and they should be prepared. Emma said that she understood everything and would try her best. Yui agreed with him. Colette asked, what about her? Cyril looked at her and said that this time the mission was about saving and fighting. She is not in that line of work, is she? Guarding the house is also an important job. She replied that if so, then fine. Cyril asked her if she could help them prepare for the trip. Then he said that he was also counting on Jean. She happily replied that she understood. Then she suggested that Colette go. Then he said that Chris was staying too. He wanted him to guard their precious home. He laughed and replied that he understood. Then he said that Louise could sleep. Her power might still be needed. She agreed with him. Then he turned to Yui and said that he wanted to clarify something with her. He might need to sneak somewhere unnoticed. Would she be able to do it without being detected? She replied that with people, no. With dragons, yes. Cyril thought about it and asked if she could turn him into a wall. Yui replied that she would try now, and then Cyril turned into a wall and was invisible. Chris said that he really was invisible. Then Cyril said that if he moved, Louise confirmed that it was true. If he moved, he could be seen right away. Then Cyril asked if she could adjust to him. Yui replied that she could, but she would get tired quickly. Cyril patted her head and said that it was okay. She shouldn't overexert herself. He would only ask in a critical situation. An hour later, Colette and Jean had prepared everything for departure. Colette asked, "Will this do?" Cyril and Louise looked at it all, and then he answered, "Yes." Then he thanked them. He stood in front of a large amount of food and said that it turned out to be a lot, a real feast. Everyone asked him what he would do with it. Cyril folded his hands in front of his chest and said that he would eat it all. She was very shocked by what she heard and brought her hands to her face and asked, "Only him?" He answered that he and Colette had a contract. What he eats is digested into energy. Jean said in surprise that it was great. Then she asked, "Does he think he will need that much strength?" He answered, "Yes, the battle will not be easy." After some time, Cyril had already eaten a lot of food, and she came up and asked, "Is he sick? Is he unwell?" Colette stood aside, watched all this, and said that she thought that soon he would not enjoy eating, and she could not help. Yui looked away and admitted that he was a strange person, told them not to strain themselves, but he himself sat there, choking. Colette turned and said that they should not let Cyril down. If anything happened, she would not forgive them. Emma proudly replied that she would do her best. Yui said that she would do the same. Chris laughed and said that they had a great leader. "Isn't that right?" Then he turned to Cyril. Cyril was sitting tired from eating a lot of food, looked at him and asked, "What is it?" Chris replied that he would not go this time, but he would give something. He gave him a phoenix horn. Emma asked him how long it would take them to get there. Cyril thought for a moment, then took the map and showed that they would go further than the Eclipse River, somewhere near the Noriv Mountains, so it would take half a day. She asked him if it wasn't easier to take the direct route. Cyril replied that their legs might actually ache differently. She told him that he could then sit on her back. She felt that he was already breathing heavily. She asked him not to overexert himself. Cyril thanked her and replied that if that was the case, he could handle it. Then he looked at her and said that it would be hard for her to do it herself. She replied, "Maybe, but what about Louise?" If he wanted to sleep, the man would just give the order. He looked at her and asked, was she talking about the obedience ring? He didn't like that. Of course, he could force them against their will, using technology. They told him that the matter was urgent. He angrily replied that he never wanted to use it. Emma replied that she understood everything. Then he stopped and came up to her and apologized for his stubbornness. She replied that she understood what he thought of them. His stubbornness was unusual. It was good for them. She forgot the word. Yui asked, "Hardworking?" Emma screamed. Exactly. Then she added that he was very strict with himself. Cyril looked at her in surprise and said that she embarrassed him. He wanted to rest for a while, but he could go further. Yui suspected something and shouted for him to stop. Cyril looked at her in surprise and asked, "What?" Emma shouted his name. Cyril noticed that he was being attacked. He managed to step aside in time. It was Louis. He asked him furiously, "What is he doing?" He answered him, "He still asks." "Don't play dumb." Louis added that if he went there, it would be a problem. Cyril asked, "Really?" He answered, "Of course. After all, their licenses are at stake." Cyril replied that even if it was, they couldn't be busy fixing the situation right now, couldn't they? He told him it wasn't his business. Emma said that they haven't changed a bit. It's a terrible guild. He told her not to worry. They will save the dragons. Louis gave the order to his dragon to attack them. Cyril wondered if he could break through without hurting anyone. But his dragon stood there and did nothing. Louis began to ask what was going on, and shouted for them to attack. Then the dragons asked Emma if they could trust him. She answered, yes, then asked, "Don't they know about Cyril?" They replied that they had not met him, and she said that he was the person she trusted the most. Louis's dragon said that they can go further. Emma asked, "Really?" He answered that they were tired of Louis. And anyway, they wanted to go with them, but that way they would cause trouble, so it would be better to keep theirs here. Cyril thanked them, adding that they would help them a lot. Then he told his dragon that they were going further. Louis began to ask the dragons furiously what they were doing. They had to kill him. The dragons began to yawn and stood in one place. Louis got really angry and said, "Damn, they underestimate him." He used the obedience skill and the dragons started obeying him. Louis shouted for them to attack. The dragons attacked Cyril, but he was able to dodge the attack. Louis added that they can't escape. They surrounded Cyril. Emma shouted for them to stop, but it was useless. Then she shouted for Cyril to attack. They can fight back. These are really not strong guys. Emma added with all her strength, otherwise it will be more difficult later. Perhaps this is the only way out. But then he turned to Yui and asked her to hide him and herself, and then they disappeared. The dragons and Louis stood in confusion, looking. They did not understand where they went. He asked where they went. Then Cyril followed behind him, because they know where he is, but while Louis is in control of them, they can't act. He set them on fire. Lewis asked in fear, "Why are they burning?" Cyril pushed him in the back, and Lewis fell to the ground. Then Cyril said, "Enough." The dragons came to their senses. Emma asked if they were okay. They answered that for now, yes, and added that this idiot used a technique and they couldn't do anything themselves. Emma wanted to attack Lewis. Lewis asked her to stop. He added that he wasn't worth it. Save your strength for the rescue. Emma came up to him and said that these were just thoughts. The other dragons said that they were jealous of her. They were worried. It turned out that she had such a good master. She confirmed this and said that he was a great master. Meanwhile, Colette walked around the territory and found a place for herself. She was worried about Cyril. Chris laughed and told her not to worry. Louis came up to them and asked Chris what he gave the owner. He answered that it was his horn, the horn of a phoenix. Colette looked at him in surprise, and he added that, as long as it exists, Cyril will not die. He wondered when he would use it. Meanwhile, Cyril and his dragons came to the place. Emma looked and asked, "Is this the same place?" Cyril answered correctly. "There should be a pasture here." He held a map in his hand and looked at the fortress and said that it was like a prison. Emma said, "At least, where she comes from, it's very different." Louis said that he did not know how it was for her, but this place was uncomfortable. Cyril said that, in general, we should not stop. They all agreed with him. They came closer to the entrance. Emma said that the atmosphere was too tense, too many dragons. Cyril asked, "She can tell?" Claw marks on the walls of the destroyed part of the building, like a bitten ceiling. Emma said that these are all different types of dragons. Cyril put his hand to his chin and thought. Then she added that there were at least 6 types of dragons. Cyril replied that he understood everything and suggested moving on. He put his hand to his chin, and because it would not be easy to fight against many dragons at once. Then a scream was heard. They were all scared, and Cyril asked what it was. A huge creature crawled out of the fortress. This one had 2 heads. Yui said chimera, a monster that combines the features of different creatures at the same time. The chimera, it noticed them and started screaming. Cyril told them to be wary of it. The chimera flew into the air and began to attack Cyril. Yui covered Cyril with herself. Emma called Cyril. At the same time, he rolled up his sleeves and shouted damn, and fire began to spray from his fingers on his hands. Cyril attacked with his ability. This will hide them. The monster calmed down, and Cyril thought that they would retreat first. They started to retreat and asked him why this chimera. Cyril replied that he himself did not know, but perhaps this was the key to the answer. Emma asked for the answer. Cyril suggested looking around. They started to walk, and Emma said that there were no dragons anywhere. All right. Cyril replied that there was only this one, the trace that Emma found. There are not 6 dragons here. There's only one which united 6. Emma suggested that this meant that the tracks belonged to a chimera. Cyril replied that it looked like it. Emma stood and looked at it and said, "How so?" Yui lowered her head down and asked what they would do. They came to save the dragons. After her words, Cyril raised his hand to his chin and stood thoughtfully, and then he said, "If only everything could be resolved with dialogue." Emma and Yui stood by him attentively. Then she asked if it would work out. Cyril replied that he would do everything in his power. He asked them to keep their distance, and they would try to get closer. Emma said that it was very dangerous. He replied that he hoped that nothing bad would happen, and if it did, he would count on their help. Then he turned to Emma and said that as soon as he gave the sign, she should distract attention. Yui would have to use vision. She answered him that she would do everything. Emma said that she understood him and asked him to be careful. Cyril approached the chimera and asked if they could hear him. The chimera started yelling at him. Cyril got scared and took a step back. Then he shouted for them to listen to him and asked if they understood what he was saying. They didn't answer him. He asked them to answer. Cyril said they can't hear, but usually it turns out that he doesn't understand anything. They are not dragons anymore. That's what their reaction means. Then he shouted, they want to go back to their old life. Then he heard voices and asked in surprise, what? They told him to kill them. Cyril happily started shouting that it was their voice. They asked him to kill. He asked why. They answered that they were hard, in pain, and wanted to die. Cyril got upset and said that consciousness had almost left the chimera's body. They were still asking him to kill them. Cyril clenched his fist and admitted that there was nothing left to do but do it. He asked them for forgiveness. Then he thought that it was very risky, but he would try. He used full opening and the chimeras opened their mouths. He launched an attack into their mouths and they lit up and then burst. In response, they thanked him and Anya was finally free of them. Only the core remained. Cyril thought that this was the core. He ran sharply, taking the phoenix horn in his hand and stuck it into the core. After which a shockwave went. Dust rose and through it, something alive was visible. The chimera asked why she survived. Cyril, His dragons were shocked and looked at this new dragon. Cyril was very happy and said that they managed to carry out their plan. Then this dragon lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Emma was worried and asked if everything was okay. Cyril approached this dragon and replied that everything was fine, breathing was fine. There was no need to worry. Emma said, "Thank God that she was alive." Emma said that the phoenix horn, this is an amazing power. Cyril agreed. Then he remembered how he destroyed the chimera. Saddened, he said that this is the only way to free her. He then added that they had no guarantee, but everything went well. Yui went to the dragon and began to examine her. Then she asked what kind she looked like. Cyril asked in surprise, "What?" Then he said, "Right." He put his hand to his chin and thoughtfully said that he did not know, he had never seen anything like it. Emma said that she had not seen it either. Yui agreed with them. Cyril said that when she was a chimera, everything was clear and distinct. Then he asked if she had been modified. No, there was something different with her. Emma said that she looked quite ordinary and asked what they would do. Cyril answered that they could not do anything. He added that they would keep her a secret. Then he asked Yui if she could help hide her, at least when there were many people. She asked, "Just make her look normal?" Cyril answered yes and patted her on the head and praised her. Yui added that she also noticed something. There are more dragons there. They have weakened. Cyril was very surprised. If this is true, then they are leaving now. After some time, Cyril stood at the table near Rose, and he said that there were 31 of them. Unfortunately, there were those who were late. They were not able to save them. She thanked him for helping. The rest of the dragons are now with the doctors. Their work is further. Then she added that he really is a good guy. Cyril, saddened, answered, "Good, but unreasonable." She told him, "Okay." Even so, the other group failed and he managed. He raised his hand to his chin and said thoughtfully, "The other group then." She brought her finger to her cheek and answered that they would be talked about for a while. Then the rumors would die down. Cyril waved his hand and said that they had already quarreled there, so it did not matter. She asked him, "Really?" She added that he should talk. If anything, she would sort it out. He thanked her. She raised her hand to her chest and asked, "Did nothing bother him?" Cyril did not expect to hear such a question. He thought that it meant that she knew everything. It was better, of course, for all this to be hidden from others. He answered that he destroyed it because it would have become a problem. He could not restrain himself. Rose became sad and said, "So that's how it is." Cyril added that it was certainly not for him to say, but he thought that this place could not be restored anyway. He thought that this should be enough. She replied that she understood him and apologized for how it turned out. Cyril waved his hand that she had not forgotten about the reward. After some time, he returned to his territory and said that he had brought her. Chris laughed and greeted the new dragon, calling her small. She was shocked and said, "Small." Chris added that this was a good decision. These are artificial dragons. In fact, the evidence was destroyed. Cyril stood, looked at the dragons in surprise, and replied that he thought so. Chris said that, however, people do not change for centuries. He did not think that they were still engaged in such experiments. Cyril folded his arms to the side and asked how long ago this had been developed. Chris thought for a moment and then replied that he could not say with certainty that everything was successful for them. However, he is so interesting. He asked in surprise, "Interesting?" Chris added that he didn't know this species either to begin with. Cyril replied that since even he didn't know, it must be a completely new species. Chris replied that it looked like the ideal that people had been striving for a long time. Cyril asked in surprise how this could have happened. He replied that, according to his thoughts, when he defeated the mixed dragon and used its horn, all 6 or 7 species united, and she was reborn. Cyril was too surprised by what he heard and asked, "Is this even possible?" Chris replied that this was just an assumption. Then he laughed and said that it was his horn. It's not surprising that this could happen. Cyril confirmed that this was the case. Then he glanced at the new dragon and asked what they would do. She was scared of Cyril. He approached her and said that everything was fine. She would protect her, and she could not worry. She asked him, would he protect her? Would he not be cruel? Cyril asked in surprise, cruel? She answered that she did not know. She did not remember it very well, but it was painful and difficult. Cyril assumed that, most likely, they had terrible conditions there. Yeah, she asked him, really? He answered yes. He came up to her and stroked her head. She was happy and began to laugh. Then Cyril knelt down and said that she would be in their guild, and then he asked if he could give her a name. She happily asked, "Name?" and she allowed him. Cyril closed his eyes and began to think, and then he suggested, "Chanel," and said that it was nice to meet you. She happily said her name and said, "Mutually." Chris came up to them, and he answered that this was great because it would be calm next to Cyril. Chris advised her to make a bond contract. She asked why. He explained that this way their bond would become stronger. Cyril got it. Exactly. He's right. Then he added that a drop of blood is needed. She replied that she understood. They put blood on the ground, and then he received the ability. Then he said that this ability is amazing. Chris asked him how he liked the new power. He looked at his hand and said, "Transformation." He lit up, and everyone was stronger. Shocked. Then he turned into a dragon man. He was surprised and said that this kind. Chris laughed and said, "Wow." Chanel said that he became completely unrecognizable. Chris thought about it and replied that he understood everything. A dragon man? Is that how to describe it? Cyril asked in surprise. A dragon man? Chris said in surprise that the connections of a man with a dragon are very interesting. Cyril looked at Chanel and said that this is such a contract with her. Then he asked, did he become a little like a chimera? The type of man, the type of dragon he can freely change. Then he began to examine his body and asked what kind of power was hidden in this. Then his dragon form began to disappear. He asked in surprise, "What? Didn't it just happen?" Chanel said in surprise, "He's back." Press asked him, "What is it?" Cyril scratched his head, looked at his hand, and thoughtfully said that this energy was over. Chris laughed at him. Cyril replied that even though they had passed so much time, it seemed like a lot of energy was needed. Chris said that they should test the ability. Cyril put his hand to the side and said that there was nothing to be done and suggested going shopping. Then he asked him to wait, and he flew away. Cyril looked at him in surprise, asked what? He a bull. Cyril was very surprised. Chris said that this was enough for them. Cyril agreed with him and said that this was enough. Chanel was very surprised that Cyril ate everything. Then Cyril laughed and said, "Surprised." Then he went up to Chanel and said that they had just made a contract with the others. He also had a contract. She looked at him and said how many different ones? That's why he had many abilities. Then he said that the guys would be back soon and they should introduce her. She agreed with him and added that she was looking forward to it. Then he suggested testing the transformation. They went out into the field and Cyril said, "Transforming." Chanel stood and looked at him in surprise. Cyril said that he had changed again. Then he thoughtfully began to examine his body and said that his muscle strength had increased. Chris suggested attacking him. Cyril looked at him and asked, "Attack?" Laughed and said that he was immortal. He would just be a small stone for him. He wouldn't harm him at all. Cyril said that was good then. He looked at Chanel and told her to keep her distance. She moved away from them, and Cyril prepared to attack. Chris shouted at him not to linger. Cyril ran to attack and hit him in the face. Chris flew to the side. Cyril shouted that this is not all. Then he took out his claws and began to attack him. Chris told him that it was not bad. He did not even have time for regeneration. He asked him if he could do more. Cyril answered, of course. He got wings and then his ability disappeared. He turned back into a human. Cyril said that the energy ran out. Chris said that he did not last even a minute with the bull. He was right. The expenditure is high. Cyril agreed with him and added that it was great. Chris said that he surprised even him. So when he is in this form, he will be the strongest of people. Cyril raised his hand to his chin and thoughtfully said that this would be their trump card. Then he called Chanel and said that this is a great ability. He thanked her. She said that her eyes do not have time at all. Chris shouted that he would never think he had such a power, and then he laughed. A few days later, Cyril and Jean were walking around the city. She said that his appearance was so noble, like a deity. Cyril looked at her in surprise and asked, "Deity?" When he went to the city, he showed his other appearance for a moment. Since then, she is like this. Then she said that to get such power is just incredible. Then she turned to him and said happily that he was still the best dragon knight of all the knights. Cyril became shy and thanked her. Then he said that at first he could only talk to them, but now he can even transform. Then he hung his head down and became sad, saying that he needs to eat a lot because he needs energy. He eats, and it takes 3 times more food than everyone else. She was surprised and asked, 3 times? He answered that he was a little embarrassed to say, but when he eats the same thing, it gets really boring. She told him that he was right. Then she raised her finger up and asked, maybe he should hire a cook. She could recommend a good one. Cyril raised his hand to his chin and thought about it, then asked, recommend? It would be better not to. She asked him why. He replied that if he was going to make a cook for his comrades, it would be better to choose from someone he felt he could trust. Gianna agreed and said, trust. Then she was very happy. He wondered if he had really made her angry by refusing. Then she turned to him and said that she would wait impatiently. He asked again in surprise, to which she replied that good cooking was connected with his transformation. She clenched her fists and added that his dragon appearance was truly beautiful. He asked her, really? She replied that she would wait impatiently. She happily replied that he would try his best. They walked further through the city, and he wondered why she liked that appearance so much. And suddenly, they were surrounded by a group of people. One of them said, "What a surprise! He thought it would be a regular murder, and here there is even a bonus." Jean was scared. Cyril asked who they were. They laughed and then said that they are nameless, ready to do anything for money. Cyril replied that he understood that they did not like him. Then he asked, "But who were they?" They laughed and replied that he had caused them too much trouble. Hadn't he? He replied, "Rintvalm then." They said that was exactly it. Then they added that he could curse them in the next life, and also his stupidity that he went without dragons. Cyril said, so they were waiting for this moment. Jana was too excited. He turned to her and said that everything was fine. He would transform. She said, "But there is little energy." He replied, "What are these guys? A second will be enough." He transformed and was able to defeat them. Then he transformed back into a human. Jana shouted happily, "Great." She glanced at those people who were lying on the ground, and then she asked what they would do with them. Would they punish them? If she told her people, they would quickly deal with them. He replied that, after all, she was a princess, but there were no casualties. She said that they dared to attack him. These men deserved to die. Cyril was surprised that she was so angry. Then he turned to these people and said that in general, they earn money by doing such things. So even he does not know. She suggested that he call Louise and she will drag them. Cyril said that they should wait a little. Before that, they still have one more case. They walked further through the city and came to a building. Jean said this place is the Rintvalm Guild, right? Cyril answered, yes. He folded his arms at the side, said that they have resentment against him more than once. But now they have entangled her in this matter. He cannot forgive this. They entered the building and Cyril apologized for intruding. Louise was very shocked and said that he was on the floor below. Then he asked him what he was doing here. Cyril thought that he was under suspicion. Then he said that there was a conversation and asked someone to call the person in charge. Louis answered that they did not have any conversations. John asked if it was enough. She turned into the appearance of the princess, said that she really will remain. She's going to do everything for reasons. Louis was shocked by what he saw. She thought that he noticed, which means that it was not John in front of his eyes, but the princess. He was confused and asked, "Really?" She answered. She heard and saw. She was going to say everything publicly. He asked her to wait and not to do it. Cyril thought that he still couldn't say it himself. Then he sighed and said that she was right after all. They weren't even listening to them, and he apologized to her. Then he asked, should they go to the government office? She replied that of course she didn't mind. After all, it is more important to reveal the truth. Cyril looked at her and thought that everything was going according to plan. If he hadn't stopped her, she would have hit him seriously. Louis asked in confusion, "What is this?" Cyril said that this was the last warning. If the person in charge didn't show up, they would leave. Louis asked to wait a little. After some time, Cyril and the princess were sitting at the table with the deputy guildmaster. He apologized for the wait. Cyril said that the oldest of them all didn't think he would come out. The deputy guildmaster adjusted his glasses and said that he couldn't be rude to the princess. She asked him if he really thought that what had happened before hadn't been rude. He asked for forgiveness and said that it was necessary to be notified of her visit immediately. He offered her his deepest apologies. He then said that, as Louis had told him, it was true that he was behind the attack. Cyril asked, "Does that mean he despises?" He apologized to him sincerely and added that he had punished him accordingly. Cyril replied that he shouldn't. The deputy guildmaster looked at him in surprise. Cyril added that he had used people to attack him. He folded his arms in front of his chest and said that it was okay. The main thing was that the princess was there. He then looked at her and asked, "What did they say? Bring her?" She said, "That would be great. As a bonus, that's what they said." Cyril said that those people had humiliated her highness. The vice guildmaster said that it was an accident. They didn't know that the princess was in front of them. Cyril said that if they said all this publicly, the sin wouldn't become easier, right? Get it? If it reaches the ears of the king himself, naturally they can't. They'll get into trouble. The vice guildmaster became sad and asked what he should do. Cyril replied that it was an incident with injuries. If everything spills out, they'll be finished. He adjusted his glasses and asked to wait a little. Then he left. After a while, he returned with money and asked, can they calm their anger with this? He counted 100,000 lyre. Cyril asked the princess, what will she say? Then Cyril agreed with him. They took the money, left. A settlement was reached. Cyril said that they were now punished. Then he looked at the princess and that she was sad. He asked her, what is it? She apologized and added that she remembered an urgent matter. Cyril asked. Is it an urgent matter? She answered, yes. Then she asked if she could take her leave. Cyril replied, of course, she still has public affairs. Then he asked if she needed help. She thanked him and added that there was nothing like that. Cyril answered that he understood everything and said goodbye to her. Cyril was left alone on the street. He stood and thought that he should hand in a report on one scoundrel to the government office. Then he glanced at the building. He read the sign and said, a shop with materials for dragons, huh? The next day there were workers on his territory, and they said that they were finished with the work. Cyril looked at them and thanked them. His dragons were standing around the corner and asked if they could come in already. Cyril answered, yes. Emma asked what kind of construction was there? What were those people carrying? Cyril answered that it would be faster if they felt it themselves. Chris laughed and said that he was the first then. Luis said that was unfair. They went inside and Luis asked what it was. Cyril asked them, how do they like it? Luis replied that it wasn't really clear yet. Emma said that she felt comfortable. Luis agreed with her. Chris looked down and said that it was dirt. She said that the soil was different. Cyril confirmed this and added that he asked to change it here. It's called bluegrass. Emma asked in surprise, bluegrass? Luis asked if Emma knew about it. She replied, yes, out of the Dragonlands. It's the most expensive there. Then she turned to Cyril and asked, is this soil really everywhere here? Cyril replied, yes. She began to look at the soil in surprise and said that everything here is in bluegrass. Luis asked, bad expensive? Cyril replied, 20,000. Luis was very shocked and asked, for the soil? Chris said, wow. Cyril replied that they spend most of the day in this place. They should make it as comfortable as possible, even if it costs a lot. Chris replied that he didn't understand it, but it wasn't cheap to restore. Then Chris asked, it's not just the land, right? Cyril looked at him and said he was right. Then he walked up to the wall and pointed at it. There's a crystal there. Cyril turned to it and said that it was a stayer. It keeps the magic here in the best condition. The dragons were very surprised. Then Chris walked up and said that this is the concentration of magic in the air, as if it had just been born. He added that people are not bad. Emma walked up to Cyril and asked, was that expensive too? Cyril replied, 80,000 lira. Luis was very shocked by what she heard. Cyril closed his eyes and said that he had money, so he fulfilled his long-standing wish. Emma replied that they were very happy. Cyril thanked them. For him, these are strange changes, but it seems that he did the right thing by investing. Then he heard conversations. They said that as it coincides with the rumors, he is an excellent person. Cyril turned back and saw the princess and the countess walking towards them. Cyril approached them and thought, princess and lady. Cyril apologized for not meeting them. The princess replied that it was okay. She added that Luciana would introduce him to a person. She said it was a woman, Countess Jiril. Cyril was very surprised and asked, Countess? Then he bowed, put his hand on his heart, and apologized. Then he said his name was Cyril LaRose. She said she was pleased to meet her. Her name is Clara Jiril. The princess said that she opened the countess's eyes. Cyril excitedly asked, opened her eyes? The countess said that she had actually been cooperating with Gallet Lintwam for a long time. Cyril stood and listened to her. He couldn't answer anything. Very few of the aristocrats who deal with the guilds are connected with dragons. Usually, such representatives become the guild's income for a long time. The countess added that she heard from the princess that they were doing terrible things. Cyril asked in surprise, what? She added that she thought about whether it was worth continuing. Then she asked if he didn't mind. Could he tell about the Dragon Faust? Cyril was very shocked and thought that she wanted to switch to them, a deal with the Count's family. The princess said that she was very angry. She still can't forgive them and she doesn't plan to. So that's the urgent matter she was talking about yesterday. She wants to weaken Lintwam. This is the power and ability to make even the Countess act.